Welcome to the Crime for Sleep channel. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Story 1. The old farmhouse had been demolished years ago. The land, now empty and overgrown, was marked for development. But when the workers arrived to start building, they found the house fully intact. Dust-covered furniture, rotting wallpaper, and a fire still smoldering in the hearth. Detective Morgan Ellis stood at the edge of the property, watching the morning mist curl around the weathered porch pillars. The low winter sun cast long shadows across the overgrown lawn, touching the peeling white paint with a gentle golden glow. She breathed in deeply, noticing how the air here felt different, heavier somehow, as if reluctant to enter her lungs. "I've got the demolition records right here," said County Clerk Jameson, his voice barely above a whisper, as if the house might be listening. His trembling fingers passed a manila folder to Ellis, signed, dated, photographed. "The Whitaker place was demolished on November 12, 2019. I was here myself, watched the walls come down." Ellis nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving the structure that shouldn't exist. The folder felt cool in her hands as she opened it, revealing photographs of a bulldozer tearing through wooden beams, of dust clouds rising from crumbling foundations. The evidence was irrefutable and yet impossible. "And no construction has happened since then?" she asked, her voice measured and calm. "None," Jameson replied. "Owner died before development could begin. The land's been tied up in probate for years." Ellis began walking toward the house, gravel crunching softly beneath her boots. The sound seemed to echo in the still morning air. Every step closer revealed new details: a tarnished brass knocker shaped like a fox's head, lace curtains yellowed with age hanging in windows that weren't there 4 days ago. The porch steps creaked under her weight, the sound traveling through the wood and into her bones. The front door was unlocked, swinging open with the lightest touch of her gloved hand. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of old books, wood smoke, and something else, something metallic and organic that made Ellis's stomach tighten. In the living room, picture frames lined the mantelpiece. The Whitaker family through the years. Mother, father, daughter. Their expressions seemed to shift slightly when viewed from different angles, smiles becoming neutral, then concerned. The last photo showed only the daughter, Rebecca, her face half in shadow. The fire in the hearth cast dancing light across the hardwood floor, illuminating a dark stain that stretched from the fireplace to the center of the room. Ellis crouched down, careful not to touch it. The stain wasn't new, it had set deeply into the grain of the wood, as if it had been there for years. "Rebecca Whitaker disappeared in 1997, came a voice from the doorway. Detective Lewis Cahill, Ellis's partner, stood with his notebook open, reading by the light filtering through the dusty windows. She was 17. Parents reported her missing after she didn't come home from school. Case was never solved. Ellis nodded, moving slowly through the room, noting how the dust swirled in the shafts of light. The parents. Died in 2018, car accident on Route 16. They were the ones who had the demolition scheduled. It was carried out by the estate after their death. Ellis paused at a bookshelf where a single volume stood out, a leather-bound journal with no title on its spine. When she pulled it from the shelf, a folded newspaper clipping fell to the floor. She picked it up carefully, unfolding it to reveal a yellowed obituary. "Rebecca Whitaker, 1981-997, she read aloud, her voice filling the quiet room. "Beloved daughter of Thomas and Elaine Whitaker, may she find in heaven the peace that eluded her on earth." But there was no mention of how she died, no cause, no circumstances. just the implication of suffering, of peace finally found. The journal contained entries in a neat, careful hand, Rebecca's diary. The early pages described typical teenage concerns: school, friends, dreams of leaving the small town. But as Ellis turned the pages, the entries grew darker, more troubled. He watches me from the mirror, read one entry from September 1997. Not my reflection, him, standing behind me even when I'm alone in the room. Mom and Dad don't believe me. They say it's stress from college applications, but I know what I see. The final entry was dated October 31, 1997, the day before Rebecca disappeared. I can't stay here anymore. He's getting closer every night. The scratching in the walls is constant now. Dad says it's just mice, but mice don't whisper your name. I found the hidden door in the basement yesterday. I know that's where he comes from. Tonight, I'm going to end this. I'll go through that door if I have to. Better to face him than to keep running. Ellis closed the journal slowly, conscious of the sound of pages brushing against each other in the quiet house. She turned to find Cahill staring at a spot on the floor near the fireplace. "Ellis," he said quietly, "the stain is spreading." Indeed, the dark patch had grown, reaching out like fingers toward where they stood. And now, in the center of the room, something was rising from the floorboards, a small mound forming, as if something were pushing up from below. The wood splintered with a soft, wet sound, revealing not dirt or foundation material, but pale fingers, then a hand breaking through. The hand was small, feminine, with a silver ring on the third finger, a delicate band with a tiny sapphire that caught the firelight. "We need to get out," Ellis said, her voice steady despite the impossibility unfolding before them. "Now." They backed toward the door, watching as more of the floor gave way. By the time they reached the porch, the sound of splintering wood had stopped. In the ensuing silence, they heard something new, a soft, rhythmic tapping, footsteps moving slowly across the floor they had just fled. The county brought in forensic teams, structural engineers, paranormal researchers. They found Rebecca's remains in a hidden chamber beneath the house, a space that shouldn't have existed, couldn't have existed, according to the building plans. Her body was curled in a fetal position, surrounded by strange markings carved into the earthen walls. The silver ring on her finger matched the one they had seen emerging from the floor. The coroner estimated she had been dead for over 20 years, consistent with her disappearance in 1997. But that didn't explain how the demolished house had reappeared, or why the fire had been burning in the hearth, or the fresh footprints they found in the dust, leading from the hidden chamber up to Rebecca's bedroom, small, bare footprints that stopped abruptly at her bedroom mirror. The development company abandoned its plans. The county tried to demolish the house again, but the equipment mysteriously malfunctioned. Eventually, they simply fenced off the property, posting warnings to keep away. Detective Ellis filed her report, documenting the facts as best she could while omitting the impossibilities. But sometimes, on quiet nights, she drives out to the edge of the property and sits in her car, watching the farmhouse that refused to stay demolished. On those nights, she often sees a light moving from room to room, as if someone is searching for something or someone with a patience that only the dead possess. And sometimes, if she stays until dawn, she sees a figure at an upstairs window, a young woman with long dark hair, staring out at the world she left behind. In those moments, Ellis wonders if Rebecca found what she was looking for behind that hidden door, or if what she found is still looking for her, calling her name in the quiet hours when the living sleep and the dead walk freely in the house that returned itself. Story 2, she had rented the apartment for months without ever seeing her neighbor, but every night she heard footsteps pacing above her. When she finally asked the landlord about him, he frowned. No one's lived in that unit for years. The rhythmic pattern of footsteps had become such a familiar backdrop to Eliza Winter's evenings that she hardly noticed them anymore. Like the soft hum of the refrigerator or the occasional distant siren, they had melted into the ambient soundscape of her life in apartment 204 of the Parkview complex. The footsteps always began around 9:30, a measured cadence that continued for precisely 45 minutes before falling silent until the next evening. Eliza had moved to the quiet suburb of Millfield 6 months ago, seeking the anonymity that only small towns paradoxically provide. Here, in a building with only 8 units, she found the solitude she craved after the collapse of her high-profile career in corporate finance. The neighbors were polite but distant, perfect for someone rebuilding their life from the scattered pieces of a very public scandal. The March evening that changed everything arrived with no warning, wrapped in the damp chill of early spring. Rain tapped gently against Eliza's windows as she stood in her kitchen, waiting for the kettle to boil. Above her head, the footsteps began their nightly journey across the ceiling, left to right, pause, right to left, pause, repeat. She had often wondered about the person who moved with such metronomic precision, creating a soundtrack to her evenings of reading and reflection. Detective Marcus Holloway's fingers drummed lightly on the steering wheel of his unmarked sedan as he pulled into the parking lot of the Parkview complex 3 days later. The windshield wipers swept away the persistent drizzle that had blanketed Millfield for a week straight. He reached for the manila folder on the passenger seat, flipping it open to review the sparse details one more time before stepping out into the rain. The call had come in as a simple welfare check, nothing unusual in a town where the elderly population outnumbered the young. But something about the landlord's voice had raised a flag in Holloway's mind, a slight tremor that suggested more than routine concern. She just keeps talking about footsteps, the landlord had explained, the phone connection crackling slightly. Says she hears them every night above her apartment, but there's nobody living in 304, detective. That unit's been empty since the renovation work stopped last summer. The building's lobby smelled of lemon-scented cleaner and damp carpet. Holloway's shoes squeaked slightly on the linoleum as he approached apartment 204. He knocked 3 times, the sound echoing in the quiet hallway. When the door opened, he was struck by the composed demeanor of the woman who stood before him. Eliza Winters did not look like someone experiencing a mental health crisis. Her apartment was immaculate, with books arranged by color on built-in shelves and a desk positioned near the window, papers stacked in neat piles. As she prepared tea for them both, her hands remained steady, her voice level as she recounted her experiences. "I know how it sounds," she said, placing a mug before him. The tea inside was the color of amber, steam rising in lazy spirals. "I'm not claiming it's supernatural, detective. I'm simply stating what I hear every night between 9:30 and 10:15. Footsteps, regular as clockwork." Holloway sipped his tea, allowing the warmth to spread through his chest. "And you've never seen anyone entering or leaving apartment 304? "Never," she replied, "but then I rarely see any of my neighbors. We all keep to ourselves here." The building's maintenance records told a story that added layers to the mystery rather than resolving it. Apartment 304 had indeed been vacant for nearly a year, following a partial renovation that was abandoned when the building's ownership changed hands. The previous tenant, an elderly man named Arthur Chambers, had moved to a retirement community after living there for nearly 3 decades. What caught Holloway's attention was a note in the margin of the maintenance log. Noise complaint 30410/15 investigated, found nothing. That evening at precisely 9:25, Holloway sat in Eliza's living room, the lights dimmed, a digital recorder placed on the coffee table between them. The rain had finally stopped, leaving behind a preternatural silence that seemed to amplify every creak of the building settling. At 9:30 on the dot it began, soft but distinct, the sound of footsteps moving across the floor above them. Left to right, pause, right to left, pause, repeat. Holloway felt the hair on his arms rise. The footsteps had a peculiar quality to them, not quite solid, yet unmistakably present. They didn't sound like someone walking on bare floorboards or carpet. They had a muffled precision that defied easy explanation. Every night, Eliza whispered, watching Holloway's face, exactly like this. The investigation that followed unfolded with methodical deliberation. The lock to apartment 304 was stiff from disuse, requiring several attempts before the landlord's key finally turned. The door swung open to reveal a space caught in limbo, half renovated, with plastic sheets covering portions of furniture, paint cans stacked in one corner, and a fine layer of dust coating every surface. No footprints disturbed the dust. No signs indicated anyone had entered the space in months. Yet the recordings from that night captured the footsteps with perfect clarity, 45 minutes of regular pacing that began and ended at the exact times Eliza had described. The building's history yielded the first real clue. Constructed in 1967, the Parkview complex had originally been designed as office space before being converted to apartments in the late 1970s. The conversion had been hasty, with corners cut to maximize profit margins. Among the many peculiarities of the building's design was a network of maintenance passageways that ran between the floor's narrow crawl spaces, intended to provide access to plumbing and electrical systems. No one uses them anymore, the current building manager explained, unfolding a set of faded blueprints across his desk. His finger traced a line that ran directly between apartments 204 and 304. Too narrow, too difficult to navigate. We installed access panels in each unit instead. The discovery of the access panel in Eliza's utility closet led to another revelation. When opened, it revealed a small space filled with decades of dust and a series of scuff marks that formed a distinct path across the plywood flooring. Something or someone had been moving through this forgotten space. Arthur Chambers, the former tenant of apartment 304, provided the final piece of the puzzle. Now residing in Sunny Pines retirement home, the 84-year-old man welcomed Holloway with a clarity of mind that belied his advanced years. 45 minutes every evening, Chambers confirmed, nodding slowly as his gnarled hands rested on the arms of his wheelchair. That was my ritual for 30 years. My doctor recommended it for my circulation problems. Walk for exactly 45 minutes every day, same time, same pattern. And you always walk the same route in your apartment? Holloway asked, the pieces beginning to align in his mind. Oh no, Chambers replied, a smile crinkling the corners of his eyes. Not in the apartment. That would have driven me mad with boredom. I walked in the maintenance passage. The old man explained how he had discovered the access panel shortly after moving in. Finding the narrow passageway perfectly suited to his needed exercise, he had established his nightly ritual, pacing back and forth in the darkness, counting his steps to ensure he completed the same distance each night. It became a meditation of sorts, he said, gazing past Holloway as if looking back through the years. Always at 9:30, always 45 minutes. Even after I moved here, I sometimes find myself getting restless at that exact time. The mystery of the footsteps in apartment 304 was solved, but a question remained that nagged at Detective Holloway's methodical mind. If Arthur Chambers had moved out a year ago, whose footsteps was Eliza hearing? The answer emerged from an unexpected source. When the building changed ownership, the new management company had hired an independent contractor to inspect the structural integrity of the aging complex. Their report, filed away and largely forgotten, contained a single paragraph that explained everything. Significant air pressure differential between floors creates acoustic anomaly in central duct system. Under specific atmospheric conditions, sounds from different time periods appear to replay through the building's ventilation network. In simpler terms, the building itself had recorded the sounds of Arthur Chambers' nightly walks through the passageways, storing them somehow in its very structure. When conditions were right, perhaps triggered by the persistent rain and changing barometric pressure, these acoustic memories would replay, creating the perfect illusion of footsteps where no one walked. Eliza continued to live in apartment 204, finding strange comfort in the rhythmic footsteps that visited each evening. Detective Holloway filed his report, categorizing the case as resolved, though he knew the explanation barely scratched the surface of a phenomenon that defied conventional understanding. Sometimes, on rainy evenings when the air feels heavy with memory, he drives past the Parkview complex and wonders about the sounds that buildings keep to themselves, echoes of lives lived within their walls, footsteps that continue long after their owners have departed, leaving no trace except the persistent memory of their passage. Story 3, a small, neatly wrapped box appeared on her doorstep. Inside, a framed photo of her own face. The angle was from her bedroom window taken from the outside. No note, no return address. Detective Morgan Reed sat at her desk, studying the photograph under the soft yellow glow of her desk lamp. The office around her had fallen silent hours ago, the only sound the occasional hum of the aging heating system fighting against the October chill. Outside, rain tapped a gentle rhythm against the windows, creating rippling shadows across the walls. "Third one this month," she whispered to herself, her voice barely disturbing the stillness of the room. She placed the photograph carefully beside two others, identical in presentation but different in content. Each showed a woman, photographed through her bedroom window, each delivered in the same meticulous packaging to their respective doorsteps. The brown paper wrapping, now carefully unfolded on her desk, revealed nothing under her magnifying glass. No fingerprints, no DNA, not even a fiber that didn't belong. The case had begun 6 weeks ago when Elaine Porter, a 34-year-old librarian, had called the station about a strange package. Her voice on the recorded call played in Reed's mind as she studied the photographs, calm at first, then gradually tightening with fear as she described opening the box to find herself staring back. Reed's fingertips traced the edge of the most recent frame. Elizabeth Chambers, 29, marketing executive, lived alone in an apartment on Westfield Avenue. Like the others, she had no known enemies, no stalkers, no disgruntled exes that raised immediate red flags. The detective's notepad contained meticulous notes about Elizabeth's daily routines, her friends, her workplaces, all interviewed, all seeming genuinely concerned, none standing out as suspicious. The weight of the case files pressed against Reed's palm as she lifted them, moving to the large cork board where a map of the city hung, 3 red pins marking the victims' homes. No obvious pattern emerged from their placement, not a straight line, not a geometric shape, not even a clustering that might suggest the perpetrator's base of operations. "What are you trying to tell us?" she murmured to the invisible sender, her breath fogging slightly in the cool air of the office. Detective Reed returned to her desk, opening her laptop. The screen's blue light cast harsh shadows across her face as she reviewed the security footage collected from nearby businesses and traffic cameras. Hours of footage, days of investigation, and still nothing. Whoever was doing this knew exactly how to remain invisible, how to slip between the frames of modern surveillance. The department psychologist had suggested the packages weren't meant as direct threats, but as demonstrations of power, someone showing these women they could get close, that they could watch without being detected. The photographs were always taken at dusk, that liminal time when interior lights came on but curtains might not yet be drawn, when the women would be visible from outside but unlikely to notice someone watching. Reed sipped her now-cold coffee, grimacing at the bitter taste. The clock on her desk read 1:17 a.m. Outside, the rain had intensified, drops now striking the windows with greater insistence. She reached for the case files again, determined to find something they'd missed. The connection emerged not from the victims, but from the packaging itself. Each box had been wrapped in the same brown paper, tied with the same twine, even the knots identical in their precision. The frames were all purchased from a small artisanal shop downtown, hand-carved, stained in a distinctive walnut finish, not mass-produced. When morning came, Reed drove through the rain-slicked streets to Handcrafted Memories, a small shop nestled between a cafe and a bookstore on Elm Street. The bell above the door announced her arrival with a soft chime, stirring the owner from his work at the counter. "Detective Reed," she introduced herself, showing her badge. "I'm interested in these picture frames." The owner, a man in his 60s with careful hands and attentive eyes, examined the photograph she showed him. "Yes, that's one of mine, the Oakmont series. I don't sell many of those, they're labor-intensive." "Would you have records of who purchased these recently?" The old man nodded slowly. "For the special pieces, yes. I like to follow up with customers, see how they're enjoying them." His ledger revealed a single name for all 3 frames, purchased over the span of 2 months. James Harmon. A quick check through the department database showed no criminal record, just a current address in a quiet neighborhood across town. Reed drove there alone, the windshield wipers keeping steady time like a metronome. The house was modest, well-maintained, with curtains drawn despite the gray daylight. No car in the driveway, no immediate signs of activity. She knocked and waited, rain collecting on her coat shoulders. No answer. The neighbors knew little Mr. Harmon kept to himself, polite but distant. Yes, he lived alone. No, they couldn't recall seeing any visitors. He worked somewhere downtown, they thought, something with photographs. Back at the station, Reed discovered that James Harmon had no social media presence, minimal public records, and worked as a restoration specialist at the city's historical society, digitizing and preserving old photographs. His employee file contained a single photograph, a man with unremarkable features, the kind of face that could disappear in a crowd, forgettable by design. For 3 days, Reed watched Harmon's house and followed him to work. He maintained a precise schedule, arriving at the Historical Society at exactly 8:30 each morning, leaving at 5:45 each evening. His movements were methodical, almost mechanical in their consistency. On the fourth day, Reed obtained a warrant to search his home while he was at work. The house was immaculate inside, every object placed with deliberate care. The living room contained no personal photographs, no mementos, nothing to suggest a life beyond these walls. The kitchen was equally sparse, functional, but impersonal. In the basement, behind a carefully constructed false wall, they found the room. The walls were lined with photographs, dozens of women, all photographed through windows, all unaware they were being watched. Each picture was labeled with a name and address, some with additional notes about routines and habits. Among them were the three who had received packages, but there were many more. Most disturbing was the workbench in the center of the room, with its neatly arranged tools and materials, the same brown paper, the same twine, more of the handcrafted frames waiting to be filled. A calendar hung nearby with more names circled on future dates. Next Tuesday, Catherine Mills. Thursday, Sarah Donovan. They arrested Harmon that evening as he returned home, his expression unchanging as they read him his rights. In the interrogation room, he sat with perfect posture, hands folded on the table, responding to questions with precise, emotionless answers. "Why send the photographs?" Reed asked, watching his face for any flicker of emotion. "To let them know," he replied, his voice as flat as still water. "Know what?" "That they're seen." A pause, his first break in rhythm. "People believe they're private in their homes, detective. They believe they're safe. They should understand that's an illusion." In his apartment, they found journals dating back 15 years, detailing his observations of hundreds of women. None had been physically harmed. Harmon had never made contact beyond the packages. His satisfaction came solely from knowing they would feel what he called the awareness of being watched, from disrupting their sense of security. The case was closed. James Harmon was charged and awaiting trial. The women he had targeted were notified, offered support services, given closure. Yet Detective Reed still found herself awake at night, staring at her own windows, wondering how many eyes might be out there in the darkness, watching without being seen. She drew her curtains tightly closed, but the feeling remained, that sense that privacy was indeed an illusion, that the boundary between being observed and being alone was as fragile as glass. And sometimes, when she arrived home after a long day, she found herself checking her doorstep with apprehension, half expecting to find a small, neatly wrapped package waiting for her. Story 4. The late afternoon light filtered through the half-drawn blinds of the Mercer family living room, casting long, thin shadows across the beige carpet. 4-year-old Ethan sat cross-legged in the corner, his small fingers tracing invisible patterns on the wall as he whispered softly. His mother, Sarah, glanced up occasionally from her laptop, smiling at what she assumed was typical imaginative play. Children his age often had invisible friends, nothing unusual about that. The house on Oakwood Drive was unremarkable from the outside. A 2-story colonial with fading white paint and navy shutters, nestled between similar homes in the quiet suburb of Pine Haven. The neighborhood was known for its good schools and low crime rate, the kind of place where people left their doors unlocked until 10 years ago, when things began to change. Not dramatically, but subtly, like a slowly shifting tide. "Who are you talking to, sweetie?" Sarah asked absently, her eyes still fixed on her screen. The question was routine, asked a dozen times before. Ethan didn't turn around. "My friend," he replied, his voice small but clear in the quiet room. "He lives in the walls." Sarah nodded, typing another sentence before saving her document. These conversations had become commonplace over the past 3 months. Ethan's imaginary friend had no name. He was simply my friend, or sometimes the shadow man. Child psychologists would call it normal development, a way for children to process the world around them. "Ethan, time for dinner," she called, closing her laptop. "Tell your friend goodbye for now." The boy's shoulders tensed slightly. He leaned closer to the wall, his lips nearly touching the eggshell paint. "I have to go now," he whispered. Then, after a pause that seemed to stretch a moment too long, "Stop scaring them. They can see you now." Sarah's fingers froze on the laptop lid. A cold sensation like ice water trickled down her spine. "What did you say, Ethan?" The boy turned, his expression perfectly normal, unbothered. "Nothing, Mommy, I'm hungry." That night, after tucking Ethan into bed, Sarah sat at the kitchen table with her husband, Mark. The soft yellow light of the pendant lamp created a small circle of warmth in the otherwise darkened room. Outside, a gentle autumn rain had begun to fall, tapping against the windows with delicate persistence. "He said something strange today," Sarah murmured, cradling her mug of chamomile tea. The ceramic was warm against her palms, a comforting contrast to the chill that hadn't left her since that afternoon. About his imaginary friend. Mark looked up from his crossword puzzle, his reading glasses perched low on his nose. What was it this time? Dragon? Superhero? His tone was light, unconcerned. He said, "Stop scaring them, they can see you now." Sarah's voice remained even, but her fingers tightened around the mug. It just felt different from his usual play. Mark removed his glasses, folding them carefully before setting them on the table. "Kids say weird things, Sarah. Remember when he went through that phase of saying there were faces in the trees?" "This felt different," she insisted quietly. 3 days later, Detective Lena Novick pulled into the driveway of the Mercer home. The gravel crunched beneath the tires of her unmarked sedan. The case file sat on the passenger seat beside her, thin but heavy with implication. This wasn't a formal investigation, more of a courtesy call, a follow-up on a strange connection that probably meant nothing at all. The detective was in her early 40s, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and eyes that had seen too much to be easily surprised. She had been with the Pinehaven Police Department for 15 years, the last 7 in homicide. She'd come to the Mercer house because of a statement buried in a decade-old file, one that had surfaced during a routine digitization of cold cases. Sarah Mercer opened the door before Novick could ring the bell. Her expression was a mixture of confusion and concern, the natural response to an unexpected visit from law enforcement. "Mrs. Mercer, I'm Detective Novick. I called earlier about asking you a few questions." Novick's voice was professional but gentle, practiced in the art of putting people at ease while delivering unsettling news. "Yes, of course, please come in." Sarah stepped aside, her hands fidgeting with the hem of her cardigan. "Is this about the break-ins down on Maple Street?" The detective shook her head as she entered the living room. "No, ma'am. Actually, I'm here because of something your son reportedly said to his preschool teacher last week." Sarah's brow furrowed. "Ethan, he's just a little boy with an active imagination, whatever he said." "Mrs. Mercer," Novick interrupted gently, 10 years ago, there was an unsolved homicide in this house. The previous owner's child, a 6-year-old girl named Lily Chambers, was found in her bedroom. Before her death, her parents reported that she had been talking to what they thought was an imaginary friend. According to the case file, the last thing anyone heard her say was, "Stop scaring them. They can see you now." The room seemed to grow colder. Sarah sank slowly onto the couch, her face draining of color. "That's impossible," she whispered. "We've lived here for 5 years. No one ever told us about a death in this house." Detective Novak opened her file, removing a photograph. "This is Lily Chambers." The image showed a smiling child with blonde pigtails and a missing front tooth. Her case was never solved. The parents moved away immediately after her death. The house remained vacant for several years before being sold to a couple who rented it out briefly, then sold it again. Disclosure laws in this state are limited. Sarah's voice trembled. "And you think, what, that Ethan is somehow connected to this girl's death? That's absurd." "I don't think anything yet, Mrs. Mercer. But when a child uses the exact same unusual phrase as another child who died in the same house a decade earlier, particularly a phrase that was never released to the public, it raises questions that need addressing." The steady tick of the grandfather clock in the corner filled the silence that followed. From upstairs came the faint sound of Ethan playing in his room, his small voice rising and falling in conversation with someone who wasn't there. Over the next 3 weeks, Detective Novak became a regular visitor at the Mercer home. What began as a strange coincidence evolved into something more substantial when Ethan began describing details of Lily's room, the butterfly wallpaper that had been painted over years ago, the window seat where she kept her dolls, hidden compartments in the closet that even the current owners hadn't discovered. On a particularly cold November evening, as rain lashed against the windows and wind moaned through the trees, Novak sat at the Mercer's kitchen table reviewing notes. Mark had taken Ethan to his parents' house for the weekend, giving Sarah space to process what was happening in their home. "He drew this yesterday," Sarah said quietly, sliding a crayon drawing across the table. The paper showed a crude but recognizable rendering of a tall, thin figure standing in a doorway. No face was visible, just darkness where features should be. Beside it stood a small stick figure labeled Lily in a child's uneven handwriting. Novak studied the drawing, her expression carefully neutral. "Has Ethan ever mentioned a name for his friend?" Sarah shook her head. "Just the Shadow Man. But last night he said something new. He said, 'The Shadow Man is sad because no one found his special box.'" The detective's pen paused above her notepad. "Did he elaborate?" "He said it's behind the basement wall where the pipes make noise." The basement of the Mercer home was like most concrete floors, exposed pipes, shelves of holiday decorations and tools. Detective Novak ran her flashlight along the wall where the main water line entered the house. Nothing seemed unusual, but a slight discoloration in the concrete caught her eye. "This section looks newer," she observed, tapping on the wall. The sound was different, hollower somehow. With the Mercer's permission and a warrant in hand, Novak brought in a small team the next day. They worked carefully, removing a section of the concrete wall approximately 2 feet square. Behind it, in a space that should not have existed, sat a metal box, roughly the size of a shoe box, covered in a decade of dust. Inside the box were photographs, dozens of them. Children at playgrounds, at school, through windows at night, and newspaper clippings about missing children dating back 15 years. At the bottom, a small leather-bound journal contained meticulous notes in handwriting that matched samples from Gerald Weber, the previous owner of the home before the Chambers family. Weber had died of an apparent heart attack 2 weeks after Lily's death. The final entry in the journal read, "She saw me today, not just the shadow I let her see, but the real me. She knows now. She said they can see you. I can't let that happen." It looks like Weber was responsible for at least 3 other missing children cases in neighboring counties. Novik explained to the Mercers a week later. He would have faced multiple murder charges if he'd lived. Sarah sat close to Mark on the couch, Ethan playing quietly at their feet. But how could Ethan know any of this? How could he say the exact same words? Novik closed her case file. Some questions in her line of work remained unanswered, filed away with the evidence and paperwork. The previous owners had the house blessed after Lily's death. Maybe they should have had the whole thing torn down instead. Ethan looked up from his toys, his eyes meeting the detective's. "The shadow man is gone now," he said simply. "He was stuck here with his box, but now you found it so he can leave." Sarah gathered her son into her arms, holding him tightly. That night, for the first time in months, Ethan slept peacefully, without whispering to the corners of his room. The Mercer family would move away within the year, but the house on Oakwood Drive would remain, its history now part of the official record, its shadows a little less dense than before. In the evidence room of the Pinehaven Police Department, the metal box sits on a shelf, case number F237 clearly labeled on its side. Sometimes, late at night when the building is empty, the security cameras momentarily glitch just for a second or two. Not long enough to cause concern, just long enough for a shadow to pass undetected through the halls, searching for somewhere new to settle. Story 5, the late afternoon light filtered through dusty Venetian blinds, casting long shadows across the hardwood floor of apartment 713. Detective Morgan Hayes stood motionless in the center of the living room, letting his senses absorb every detail. The space felt unusually confined for a one-bedroom in this part of town, claustrophobic almost. A forgotten cup of tea sat on the coffee table, a thin film formed on its surface. The room temperature hovered at an uncomfortable 62 degrees, despite the building's heating system running at full capacity. "When was the last confirmed sighting?" Hayes asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Officer Bennett consulted her notepad, the soft rustle of paper filling the silence. "Last Tuesday." Her supervisor called it in when she missed 3 consecutive shifts at the library, very out of character, apparently. Hayes nodded slowly, his gaze drawn to a collection of measuring tapes and rulers scattered across the dining table. Beside them lay a leather-bound journal, its pages covered in meticulous handwriting. Numbers, measurements, and timestamps filled each page, growing more frantic toward the end. "Has anyone spoken with the building manager?" Hayes continued, running his finger along the edge of a bookshelf that seemed oddly positioned, as if it had been pushed forward from the wall. "Yes, sir. He provided access to the apartment and mentioned that Emily Lawrence had been a model tenant for the past 11 months. Quiet, paid rent on time. Started calling about maintenance issues about 2 months ago, complaints about the walls, the dimensions of the rooms." Hayes knelt down, examining the baseboards along the living room wall. To the untrained eye, nothing would appear amiss. But Hayes noticed the slight gap between the flooring and the wall, as if one had shifted in relation to the other. He pulled out a small tape measure from his pocket and compared a measurement to the floor plan pinned to his clipboard. "The dimensions are off by almost 4 inches, he murmured, more to himself than to Officer Bennett. The superintendent, a man named Grable with perpetually damp palms and darting eyes, had dismissed Emily's complaints as the imaginings of an anxious mind. "Some people just ain't cut out for city living," he had told Hayes earlier that morning, nervously jingling the keys in his pocket. "Walls can't move, can they? That's just not possible." Hayes moved toward the bedroom, his footsteps creaking against floorboards that seemed to groan under even his careful tread. The bedroom felt even more constricted than the living room. A twin bed was pressed uncomfortably against one wall, as if it had been pushed there over time. On the nightstand sat 3 different alarm clocks, all unplugged. She kept a detailed log, Hayes said, flipping through the journal he'd brought with him from the dining table. Listen to this entry from 3 weeks ago, measured again this morning. Living room is now 114 by 122. That's 7 inches less than when I signed the lease. Management insists I'm mistaken. I know I'm not. Officer Bennett shivered slightly. Could she have been experiencing some kind of psychological episode? Hayes didn't answer immediately. Instead, he ran his hand along the bedroom wall, feeling for inconsistencies. His fingers detected a slight indentation near the corner, and he pressed against it gently. A subtle scraping sound emanated from behind the drywall, so faint it might have been the building settling or pipes expanding in the heating system. Her family mentioned no history of mental health issues, Hayes finally replied. Her sister described her as methodical, rational. Worked as a research librarian specializing in architectural history. Hayes continued his examination of the apartment, moving into the bathroom. The shower stall seemed oddly narrower than standard dimensions. The medicine cabinet contained nothing unusual: everyday toiletries, over-the-counter pain relievers, and a prescription for allergy medication. Back in the living room, Hayes crouched near an air vent near the floor. Using a pen light, he illuminated the dusty interior. Something caught his eye, a small scratch on the metal inside, as if something had been dragged across it. He reached in carefully and extracted a small fragment of paper. On it was written in Emily's precise handwriting, "If found, please contact detective." The rest was torn away. She was preparing for her disappearance, Hayes noted, carefully placing the fragment in an evidence bag. She suspected something would happen to her. As twilight descended outside, the apartment grew darker, the shadows deeper. Hayes instructed the forensic team to take measurements of every room, every doorway, every window, and to compare them with the original floor plans from the building records. 3 hours later, in the precinct's fluorescent-lit conference room, Hayes pinned photographs of the apartment to a corkboard. Beside them, he placed the building's original architectural plans from 1927, when the structure was first erected. The discrepancies were subtle but undeniable. The apartment's current dimensions were indeed smaller than the official floor plan by several inches in multiple directions. The building has a strange history, Hayes explained to his captain, spreading out printouts from the city archives. It was designed by an architect named Elias Whitmore, who disappeared shortly after its completion. There were rumors about his fascination with non-Euclidean geometry and spaces that could, theoretically, be manipulated. "Are you suggesting the apartment actually shrank?" Captain Reynolds asked, eyebrows raised in skepticism. "I'm suggesting that Emily Lawrence believed it did, and she vanished after documenting these changes meticulously. Her measurements were precise, taken multiple times daily. Something was happening in that apartment that frightened her enough to document it with scientific rigor." The investigation continued for weeks. Forensic teams combed through the apartment inch by inch. They discovered peculiar anomalies in the structure sections of drywall that were newer than others, unusual hollows within the walls that didn't align with the building's plumbing or electrical systems. And most disturbingly, faint traces of blood behind the baseboards that matched Emily's type. The building's history revealed a pattern that sent a chill through the detective division. Every decade or so, a tenant from apartment 713 would vanish without explanation. The The cases were never solved, the people never found. The disappearances were spread far enough apart that no one had connected them until now. 6 months into the investigation, with no body and no concrete evidence of foul play, Emily Lawrence's case was quietly moved to the cold case files. The apartment remained vacant, the building management reluctant to rent it out, while the investigation remained technically open. Detective Hayes, however, could not let it go. He found himself driving past the building during off hours, watching the windows of apartment 713. Some nights he thought he saw a light flickering inside, though the electricity had been shut off. Other nights he would sit in his car until dawn, listening to the recorder he'd left running in the empty apartment, hoping to capture the scraping sounds Emily had documented. On one recording, beneath the ambient noise of traffic and the building's heating system, Hayes detected something unusual, a woman's voice, so faint it was almost imperceptible. "The walls keep moving. They're almost against my bed now. I don't think I can get out." The building's current owner, a corporate entity that had acquired the property 4 years earlier, denied any knowledge of structural issues or the pattern of disappearances. When pressed about renovations or modifications to apartment 713, they produced documentation showing only standard maintenance had been performed. But Hayes had discovered, buried in historical archives, blueprints from a renovation in 1952 that didn't match the current layout. Spaces that should exist didn't. Walls appeared where corridors once were. It was as if the building had been slowly digesting itself over decades, reconfiguring its interior anatomy inch by inexplicable inch. 1 year after Emily's disappearance, the case remained officially unsolved. The apartment was finally rented again to a young graduate student who was attracted by the affordable rent and convenient location. Detective Hayes made a point of introducing himself to the new tenant, providing his direct number just in case. 3 weeks later, that new tenant called Hayes in the middle of the night, voice trembling with a fear that felt all too familiar to the detective. "I know this sounds crazy," the young man whispered into the phone, "but I think my apartment is getting smaller." Hayes asked only one question: "Have you heard scraping behind the walls?" The silence that followed provided the answer Hayes had been dreading. By the time he arrived at the building 20 minutes later, apartment 713 was empty. The tenant's belongings remained scattered throughout, a coffee pot still warm on the kitchen counter. On the dining table lay a tape measure and a newly purchased notebook, the first page filled with careful measurements and a single underlined question: where does the space go? Detective Hayes stood alone in the center of the living room, feeling the now familiar claustrophobic press of the walls. He took out his own tape measure and confirmed what he already suspected: the room was now 2 inches narrower than during his last visit. As he turned to leave, he heard the faint sound of scraping behind the drywall, like something large and patient, slowly making its way through the spaces between rooms. The case of Emily Lawrence remains officially unsolved to this day. Apartment 713 continues to be rented, its unusually affordable rate attracting new tenants despite its strange history. The building stands unchanged from the outside, its ornate facade giving no hint of the anomalies that exist within its walls. Detective Hayes retired from the force last year, but still drives past the building occasionally. He keeps a file on every tenant who has occupied apartment 713, noting how long they stayed and the circumstances of their inevitable departures. Some simply move out, citing vague reasons about the space not feeling right. Others vanish, leaving behind possessions and questions that no one seems equipped to answer. The walls of apartment 713 continue their imperceptible inward journey, and somewhere in the slowly vanishing spaces between what was built and what now exists, the truth about Emily Lawrence and all the others remains hidden, a mystery measured in missing inches and the soft, persistent sound of something scraping behind the drywall. Story 6. The coffee shop on Maple Street had a particular quality to its light in the late afternoon. Amber rays filtered through half-drawn blinds, casting long shadows across wooden tables where locals nursed their drinks. Detective Sarah Reeves observed all this from her corner seat, the steam from her untouched Americano creating ghostly wisps that vanished into the air. Her attention, however, was fixed on the statement in her hands, written in neat, precise handwriting that betrayed no emotion despite the unsettling story it told. "I met myself yesterday," the statement began, "not in a mirror, not in a reflection, in person." Sarah ran her finger along the edge of the paper, feeling its texture. The case file had landed on her desk that morning, marked as low priority. A possible identity theft situation, the captain had said with a dismissive wave, but something about this one felt different, like a cold draft in a sealed room. The woman who wrote the statement, Elaine Mercer, worked as a pharmacist at Westside Medical. 42 years old, divorced, no children. Lived alone in a modest house on Sycamore Drive. No history of mental illness, no prior police contact. By all accounts, a perfectly ordinary life. Until yesterday at 2:17 p.m. Sarah took a small sip of her coffee, now lukewarm, and continued reading the statement. Elaine had been checking out at the grocery store when she noticed a woman standing 3 people ahead in line. Same height, same chestnut hair cut in an angled bob, same slightly rounded shoulders. Even from behind, Elaine had experienced an uncanny sense of familiarity. "It was like watching myself on video," she had written, "except I wasn't doing what I remembered doing." When the woman turned to place her credit card back in her wallet, Elaine saw her face. Her own face, down to the small scar above her right eyebrow from a childhood bicycle accident. The woman had noticed Elaine staring and smiled politely before turning away. Elaine had abandoned her groceries and followed the woman to the parking lot, watching as she loaded bags into a blue Honda Civic, the same model and color as Elaine's own car, but with different license plates. Something between curiosity and fear had compelled Elaine to approach. "Excuse me," Elaine had said, and the woman turned, surprise registering on Elaine's face. Sarah flipped to the next page of the statement, her fingers leaving slight indentations on the paper. The coffee shop had grown quieter as the afternoon crowd thinned, leaving only the occasional clink of a spoon against ceramic and the low hum of the espresso machine. "She dropped her wallet when she saw me up close," Elaine had written. "I picked it up to hand it back, and that's when I saw her driver's license. It had my name, my address, but her picture." Sarah placed the statement down and opened the thin case file. There was a copy of Elaine's driver's license, a police report from Officer Daniels who had taken the initial statement, and a single security camera image from the grocery store parking lot. The image was grainy, but it showed 2 women standing face to face. Even in the poor quality of the printout, the resemblance was undeniable. Something about this didn't fit the typical pattern of identity theft. Identity thieves rarely approached their victims, and they certainly didn't craft elaborate physical disguises to match them. Sarah checked the information gathered so far. Officer Daniels had run the license plate visible in the security footage. It belonged to a rental car from Airport Car Services, rented 4 days ago by an Elaine Mercer with the same date of birth as the real Elaine. The credit card used was legitimate, not reported stolen, and in Elaine's name. Outside the coffee shop window, the sky had deepened to a muted purple. Sarah gathered the papers and slipped them back into the folder. Her intuition, the quiet voice that had guided her through 15 years of detective work, was whispering that there was more here than a simple case of stolen identity. The next morning brought a thin autumn fog that clung to the streets like a memory reluctant to fade. Sarah drove to Elaine Mercer's house, the file on the passenger seat. She had called ahead, and Elaine had agreed to meet before her shift at the pharmacy. The house was exactly as the file described, modest, well-maintained, with carefully trimmed hedges and potted mums flanking the front door. Elaine answered on the first knock. In person, she appeared more tired than her driver's license photo, with shadows beneath her eyes that suggested a night without sleep. "Thank you for coming," Elaine said, leading Sarah into a living room decorated in muted blues and grays. "I was afraid you wouldn't take this seriously." "We take all reports seriously, Ms. Mercer," Sarah replied, settling into an armchair that faced the window. "Can you tell me if anything else has happened since you filed your report?" Elaine's hands twisted in her lap. "She came to my house last night." Sarah felt a small shift in her perception, like a camera lens adjusting its focus. "Did you speak with her?" "No," Elaine said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I saw her through the window. She was just standing across the street, looking at my house. When I opened the door, she was gone." "Did you notice anything else? Any vehicles?" "No cars," but Elaine hesitated, then reached for a small box on the coffee table. "This was in my mailbox this morning." Inside the box was a single key on a plain metal ring. Sarah carefully lifted it with a tissue. "It looks like a house key," Sarah observed. "It is," Elaine said. "It's the spare key to my house, the one I keep hidden in the planter on the back porch." The quiet voice in Sarah's mind grew louder. This wasn't just identity theft. This was something more personal, more deliberate. She made a note to request additional patrols past Elaine's house and suggested basic security precautions, changing locks, installing a simple camera system. As Sarah was leaving, she noticed a framed photograph on the entryway table. Elaine, perhaps 10 years younger, standing beside an older woman with the same shaped eyes, the same subtle curve to their smiles. "Your mother?" Sarah asked. "Yes," Elaine said with a sad smile. "She passed away 5 years ago, cancer." "I'm sorry for your loss. Were you close?" "Very. It was just the two of us for most of my life. My father left when I was a baby." Sarah nodded and made another note, this one mental. A woman without close family ties might be easier to impersonate, fewer people to notice discrepancies. Back at the station, Sarah dug deeper. She requested Elaine's birth certificate, credit history, and employment records. Hours passed as she assembled a timeline of Elaine's life, a normal life with the usual patterns of school, work, marriage, divorce, no unusual financial activity, no suspicious gaps. It was while reviewing Elaine's medical records that Sarah found the first thread that seemed out of place. 16 years ago, Elaine had been hospitalized for 3 weeks following a car accident, severe concussion, temporary amnesia. The hospital was in Portland, Oregon, over 2,000 miles from where Elaine now lived. Sarah pulled up Elaine's credit history from that time. There was a 3-month gap in activity after the accident, and then a sudden relocation to the East Coast. New job, new apartment, new life. The quiet voice was no longer whispering. It was speaking clearly now, suggesting a possibility that felt both outlandish and strangely plausible. Sarah drove back to Elaine's house as evening settled over the neighborhood. Lights glowed warmly from windows, and the occasional dog walker nodded in greeting as they passed. Everything normal, everything as it should be, except for the blue Honda Civic parked directly across from Elaine's house, the same one from the security footage. Sarah parked and approached cautiously. The car was empty, but through Elaine's front window she could see 2 figures sitting in the living room. Same height, same hair, same profile illuminated by the soft light of a table lamp. She moved quickly to the front door, which was unlocked. Inside, the conversation stopped abruptly as both women turned to look at her. "Detective," one of them said, the one wearing a green sweater. "I'm glad you're here." "Elaine?" Sarah asked, looking between them. "Yes," they both answered simultaneously. The woman in the blue cardigan, the one Sarah had met that morning, stood up. "She's claiming to be me. She knows things, detective, things only I should know." The other woman remained seated, her posture relaxed despite the tension in the room. "I'm not claiming anything that isn't true," she said calmly. "We both know what happened in Portland." Sarah stayed by the door, keeping both women in her sight. What happened in Portland? The seated woman smiled sadly. A chance to start over, a new identity for a new life. "She's lying," the standing woman Elaine said. "I've never met her before yesterday." "Haven't you?" the seated woman asked. "Think about the accident, Elaine. The days afterward that you can't quite remember, the doctors talking about dissociative amnesia." Sarah watched as uncertainty flickered across Elaine's face. The seated woman continued, her voice gentle. "We made a choice then to separate, to become 2 people instead of 1. You took our name, our history. I created a new one. But I never stopped watching, never stopped wondering if we made the right choice." "That's impossible," Elaine whispered, but there was a tremor in her voice that hadn't been there before. The seated woman reached into her purse and removed a small leather-bound journal. "Your mother gave you this on your 16th birthday. You wrote in it every day until the accident." Elaine's hand moved unconsciously to her neck, touching a spot just below her collarbone. "The scar," she said softly, "from the accident." "Not from the accident," the seated woman corrected. "From when we were 9, Dad's fishing hook at the lake before he left." Sarah stepped further into the room, mind racing. Dissociative identity disorder was rare but documented. Cases where distinct personalities separated so completely, however those existed primarily in fiction. "Why now?" Sarah asked the seated woman. "Why come back after 16 years?" "Your mother," the woman said, looking at Elaine. "Our mother. In her final days, she asked for both of us. She always knew somehow. She made me promise to find you to make us whole again." Elaine sank slowly onto the couch, her face pale. "I have dreams sometimes," she whispered, "of a life I don't remember living, places I've never been." "My life," the other woman said, "my memories reaching out to you." Sarah remained silent, watching as 16 years of carefully maintained separation began to dissolve in the quiet living room. Whatever had happened in Portland, whether a psychological break that created 2 distinct personalities, A woman who had found someone remarkably similar to replace a lost past, or something that defied the neat categories of police reports. It was resolving itself now, in its own strange way. Outside, a car drove slowly past the house, its headlights briefly illuminating three women sitting in a living room, two with identical faces. In the quiet that followed, Sarah thought about perception and reality, about how fragile the boundaries of identity could be. The case file would remain open, its resolution noted but never fully explained. Two women who were perhaps once one, or perhaps had always been two, reconnecting across a divide of years and memory. A stranger with her own face coming home at last. Story 7, lamplight pooled across the dusty hardwood floor, casting long shadows that stretched like grasping fingers along the faded wallpaper. Detective Morgan Reed stood motionless in the grand foyer of the Blackwood estate, listening. The house seemed to breathe around her, settling creaks and soft sighs that whispered through the cavernous halls of the century-old mansion. Outside, rain tapped gently against tall windows, a quiet percussion that marked the passing seconds as Reed took in the scene. "This place hasn't been occupied for nearly 15 years, Officer Danson murmured beside her, his voice unnaturally loud in the stillness. Tax records show the last Blackwood died in 2009. No heirs came forward." Reed nodded, her eyes tracing the ornate staircase that spiraled upward into shadow. The call had come in just after dusk, a routine check after neighbors reported lights moving through the supposedly vacant property. Nothing urgent, nothing that explained the unease settling into her bones like the dampness from the rain. "The real estate company sent someone to assess the property last week," Danson continued, flipping through his notes. "That's when they found irregularities in the floor plan." Reed began to move through the first floor, her footsteps muffled by a film of dust. The mansion was still fully furnished, heavy Victorian pieces draped in sheets like patient ghosts. Personal items remained on mantels and tabletops, as though the occupants had simply stepped out for a moment, intending to return. 15 years of dust told a different story. The grand dining room held a table set for 6, silverware tarnished but meticulously arranged. In the library, a book lay open on a reading table, a faded ribbon marking a page never finished. The kitchen contained dishes washed and stacked, waiting for a meal never prepared. "Second floor," Reed asked quietly. Danson hesitated just slightly before nodding. The upper hallway stretched in both directions, lined with closed doors. Reed moved methodically, checking each room: a master bedroom with clothes still hanging in the closet, a study with papers neatly arranged on the desk, a bathroom with a medicine cabinet full of expired prescriptions. Nothing unusual except for the undisturbed nature of it all. The air felt thicker here, somehow weighted with expectation. "End of the hall," Danson said, his voice lowered involuntarily. That's where the surveyor noticed it. At first glance, the hallway appeared to end at a large window overlooking the back gardens, but as Reed approached, she noticed the discrepancy. The exterior dimensions of the house, which she had noted upon arrival, didn't match the interior space. There should have been more rooms, more hallway. "We thought it might be false walls," Danson explained, running his hand along the seemingly solid surface. "Old houses like this sometimes have sealed rooms, spaces bricked up during renovations." Reed pressed her palm against the wallpaper, feeling the cool solidity beneath. "Did you check for hidden doors?" Danson nodded, nothing obvious. "We were about to call in a structural engineer when..." He trailed off, watching Reed's face. "When what?" she prompted. Instead of answering, he gestured for her to lean closer to the wall. Reed hesitated, then pressed her ear against the faded floral pattern. At first, there was nothing but the ambient sounds of the old house, then so faint she might have imagined it a whisper, words indistinguishable but unmistakably human. Reed pulled back sharply. Could be pipes. Old heating systems sometimes make sounds like voices. That's what I thought, Danson agreed too quickly, until we found the blueprints in the study. The original architectural plans, yellowed with age, were spread across a table in the study. Reed studied them under the beam of her flashlight, comparing the layout to what she had observed. According to the blueprints, there should have been 3 additional rooms on the second floor and a small corridor connecting them. Rooms that from the hallway appeared not to exist. There are no doors, Reed murmured, tracing the phantom rooms with her finger. How would anyone access these spaces? That's the thing, Danson replied. If you look at the older blueprints, he slid another sheet forward, there used to be doors. In the 1967 renovation, the doors were removed, walls plastered over, but the rooms remained. Reed felt a chill that had nothing to do with the damp April night. Sealed rooms with what inside them. According to county records, nothing. The rooms were supposed to be empty during renovation, scheduled for reconfiguration. Reed returned to the hallway, studying the wall with renewed intensity. The dimensions were wrong. The spaces had to exist. But how could rooms remain furnished, remain occupied with no way in or out? She ran her fingers along the seams of the wallpaper, searching for inconsistencies. Near the baseboard, she felt it a slight draft, cool air seeping through an almost imperceptible gap. Nailing, Reed examined the floor, noting a nearly invisible line in the hardwood, a track almost completely concealed by decades of wax and polish. There's a mechanism, she murmured. The whole wall slides. It took them nearly 20 minutes to discover the release, a decorative molding that pivoted under pressure. With a sound like a long-held breath finally released, the wall slid sideways, revealing a narrow corridor beyond. The air that escaped was stale but not unpleasant, carrying the faint scent of lavender and beeswax. Reed's flashlight illuminated a short hallway with 3 doors, each closed, each apparently untouched for decades. Stay here, Reed instructed Danson, drawing her service weapon. Call for backup. The first door opened onto a nursery, perfectly preserved. A crib stood in the center, surrounded by toys from another era. A rocking chair by the window still held an impression in its cushion, as though someone had just risen from it. But it was the second room that made Reed's breath catch. A bedroom meticulously maintained, a vanity with cosmetics arranged precisely, hairbrush still containing a few silver strands. Clothes laid out on the bed as if in preparation for an outing, and photographs, dozens of them arranged on every surface, all showing the same family, mother, father, 3 children spanning decades. The most recent appeared to be from the late 1990s. The third door was locked. When backup arrived 30 minutes later, they brought equipment to force the final door. What they found behind it defied simple explanation, a room converted into a shrine. Newspaper clippings covered one wall, all detailing the same story, the tragic disappearance of Emily Blackwood, age 7, in 1965, presumed drowned in the lake behind the property, though her body was never recovered. At the center of the room stood a small table set for tea. 2 cups, one large, one child-sized. Both contained the residue of liquid long evaporated, and a journal open to the final entry dated just 3 weeks earlier. Emily spoke to me again today. She says she's tired of hiding, says it's time for everyone to know what really happened that summer. I told her I can't bear it anymore, this secret. 59 years is too long to live with what we did. The doors are sealed, but the truth finds its way out like water seeping through stone. The signature at the bottom belonged to Margaret Blackwood, Emily's mother, the woman who, according to official records, had died 15 years earlier. The investigation that followed unraveled a family mystery spanning 3 generations. Ground-penetrating radar located 2 sets of remains within the walls of the sealed rooms, 1 adult, 1 child. Dental records confirmed the adult as Margaret Blackwood, dead approximately 3 weeks, matching the final journal entry. The child's remains, however, dated back to the 1960s. Reed stood in the rain as the medical examiner's team carefully removed the small bundle from the house. The journal had revealed the outline of a tragic story, a child's accidental death, covered up to protect the family name. A mother driven to madness by grief, sealing herself away with the secret she could no longer bear. But one question remained unanswered, haunting Reed as she watched the house recede in her rearview mirror. If Margaret Blackwood had sealed herself into rooms with no doors, existing there for 15 years after her supposed death, who had written in the journal just 3 weeks ago, and who had the neighbors seen, moving from window to window, holding a light in the darkness. Story 8. The evening light filtered through the maple trees along Sycamore Lane, casting long shadows across the neighborhood yard sales that dotted the quiet suburban street. Detective Sarah Mercer ran her fingers absently over a collection of porcelain figurines as she recalled the details of that Saturday afternoon in October. The air had been crisp with the promise of autumn, leaves crunching underfoot as residents browsed through the remnants of other people's lives. This was where it had begun for Eliza Winters, 34, librarian, recently divorced at the Henderson's yard sale 3 doors down from her modest 2-bedroom home. The case file sat heavy on Sarah's desk, the glossy crime scene photos a stark contrast to the handwritten witness statements paperclipped to their edges. She was drawn to it immediately, Mrs. Henderson had told the detective, her voice barely audible on the interview recording that played softly in the background of the precinct's empty break room. Said it reminded her of a doll her grandmother had when she was little. The doll was Victorian style, 18 inches tall with a porcelain face, glass eyes a deep shade of cornflower blue, and hair made of fine auburn human hair. Its dress was faded burgundy velvet with yellowed lace trim original to the piece, according to the antique dealer they'd later consulted. Slightly worn, but in remarkable condition for something crafted in the 1890s. Eliza had paid $40 for it, a fair price, everyone agreed. The department's voice recorder had captured the soft rustle of fabric as Eliza's neighbor, Janet Pickman, shifted in her seat during her statement. She showed it to me that afternoon, said she was going to clean it up and put it on display in her study. I remember thinking those glass eyes seemed to follow you around the room. I didn't say anything, though. Eliza was so pleased with her find. Detective Mercer's pen moved slowly across her notepad as she listened to the testimonies again, the scratch of ink against paper a meditation that helped her think. Outside, raindrops began to tap against the windows, a gentle rhythm that matched the methodical pace of the investigation. The call had come in early on a Monday morning, 15 days after the yard sale. Eliza had not shown up for work at the Oak Ridge Public Library. It wasn't like her to miss a shift without notice. Her coworker, Martin Chen, had driven to her house during his lunch break, The front door was unlocked. The house was immaculate, Officer Reynolds had noted in his preliminary report. The detective's finger traced the typed words as she reviewed them for the dozenth time. Nothing out of place except for a chair pulled away from the kitchen table. No signs of forced entry, no indication of a struggle. But Eliza Winters was gone. On her kitchen counter sat the Victorian doll, its glass eyes reflecting the morning sunlight that streamed through the spotless windows. Next to it lay Eliza's journal, open to the most recent entry. Detective Mercer closed her eyes, recalling the photographed page of neat handwriting that now sat in an evidence bag. October 15, I bought the doll yesterday and left it in the garage. This morning it was on my kitchen counter. I must have brought it inside and forgotten. Too much wine with dinner, perhaps. October 16, the doll was in my bed when I woke up. I know I didn't put it there. I'm going to set up my old laptop camera tonight. October 17, reviewed the footage. Nothing, but the doll moved again, from the shelf to the chair. I'm calling Janet to come over. October 18, Janet couldn't come. The doll was in the bathtub this morning. I'm taking it to an antique appraiser. There must be something in the mechanics I'm missing. The entries continued for several more days, each one describing the doll in a new location each morning. The handwriting grew increasingly agitated, the pen pressing harder into the paper with each dated entry. The last entry was dated October 24, the day before Eliza was reported missing. It whispered my name tonight. I wasn't asleep. I wasn't dreaming. It knows me. The precinct hummed with the quiet efficiency of a night shift. Detective Mercer sipped her lukewarm coffee as she reviewed the security footage from Eliza's laptop one more time. The grainy black and white video showed the doll sitting motionless on a shelf from 11:23 p.m. until 6:47 a.m. when Eliza entered the frame, visibly startled to find the doll still on the shelf. But there was something else, something in the way the shadows moved across the room at 3:17 a.m., something almost imperceptible. The antique appraiser they'd consulted, an elderly man with arthritic hands and thick glasses, had examined the doll carefully before offering his assessment. "Victorian morning doll," he'd said, his voice a dry whisper that matched his papery skin. "Sometimes made with hair from the deceased, a memento mori, quite valuable to collectors." When asked if the doll could move on its own, some hidden mechanism perhaps, he had laughed softly, the sound like pages turning in an old book. "No mechanisms in these dolls, detective, though there are stories, old wives' tales about objects carrying impressions, especially those made with personal materials." 3 weeks into the investigation, they found Eliza's car parked at River's Edge, a scenic lookout point 20 miles outside of town. Her purse was on the passenger seat, her wallet untouched, no signs of violence, no footprints leading away from the vehicle despite the soft, muddy ground surrounding it. It was as if she had simply vanished. The doll remained in evidence lockup, carefully tagged and sealed in a clear plastic container. Night shift officers occasionally mentioned hearing soft tapping sounds from that section of the storage room, but nothing was ever documented in official reports. 6 months passed, the case grew cold. Detective Mercer was assigned to new investigations, though she still reviewed Eliza's file every few weeks, searching for something she might have missed. Then came the call from Janet Pickman. "I found something," she said, her voice trembling slightly over the phone. "Cleaning out my guest room closet. There's a shoebox with old photos. Eliza's grandmother is in some of them, and Detective, there's the doll." The photographs were from the 1950s, yellowed and slightly curled at the edges. In one, a young girl, Eliza's mother, sat on a porch swing next to an older woman. Between them, propped up with its own small pillow, sat the doll. The similarities were unmistakable. The same dress, the same auburn hair, the same glass eyes that seemed to catch the light in an uncanny way. "That's not all," Janet said, sliding another photo across the detective's desk. "Look at the back." Written in faded blue ink on the reverse side were the words, "Elizabeth and Mother with Charlotte's doll, made from Charlotte's hair before she was buried, 1954. Detective Mercer felt a chill that had nothing to do with the precinct's aggressive air conditioning. Who was Charlotte? Eliza's great-aunt. She died as a young woman. The family never spoke much about it. Janet hesitated. "There's something else. I've been going through some of Eliza's things that her ex-husband didn't claim. I found her birth certificate. Her full name isn't just Eliza, it's Charlotte Elizabeth Winters. The case remains officially unsolved. Eliza Winters is still listed as a missing person. Her family held a memorial service a year after her disappearance, though without a body, there was no burial. The Victorian doll disappeared from the evidence lockup during a departmental move. The officer responsible for transporting the sealed containers was written up for negligence, though he maintained that the container had been empty when he collected it. 2 years later, at a yard sale 3 counties over, a young woman with auburn hair picked up a Victorian doll with glass eyes and a burgundy velvet dress. She felt an immediate connection to it, she would later tell friends, almost as if it had been waiting for her. She paid $40, a fair price, everyone agreed. Detective Mercer sometimes drives by Eliza's old house on Sycamore Lane. New people live there now, a young couple expecting their first child. They've painted the shutters and planted roses along the walkway. Life has moved on. But on quiet nights when she reviews cold cases that never quite let her go, she sometimes thinks she hears the soft tap of porcelain fingers against glass, like someone or something trying to get her attention. She's careful never to look toward the sound. Story 9. The Mayfair Hotel stood on the corner of Elm and 3rd, its brick facade weathered by decades of rain and snow, yet still maintaining an air of faded elegance. The grand lobby, with its marble columns and ornate chandelier, whispered stories of a more glamorous era. On this particular Tuesday morning in October, as autumn leaves skittered across the sidewalk outside, Maria Delgado pushed her cleaning cart down the hushed corridor of the 3rd floor. She had worked at the Mayfair for 7 years, knew every corner, every regular guest, every creaking floorboard. But today, something was different. Maria paused outside room 312, consulting her cleaning schedule. The room wasn't on her list, it never had been during her time at the hotel. Yet the door stood slightly ajar, a sliver of darkness visible through the crack. The brass numbers gleamed as if recently polished. She hesitated, then knocked gently. "Housekeeping," she called, her voice barely disturbing the stillness of the hallway. No response came from within. Maria pushed the door open slowly, the hinges moving without a sound. The room was dim, the heavy curtains drawn against the morning light. But even in the half-darkness, Maria could see that the room was occupied or had been very recently. A suitcase sat open on the luggage rack. A man's suit jacket hung neatly in the closet. On the bathroom counter, a shaving kit was arranged with military precision. razor, brush, cologne bottle, all perfectly aligned. Maria backed away, closing the door quietly. Something felt wrong, though she couldn't quite place why. At the front desk, she found Daniel, the day manager, typing on the ancient computer system the hotel still used. "There's someone staying in 312, she said, her brow furrowed. Daniel looked up, his fingers pausing over the keyboard. "That's not possible," he replied, his voice low. "Room 312 has been sealed since before I started working here, 15 years at least." A chill that had nothing to do with the hotel's outdated heating system crawled up Maria's spine. Well, someone's in there now. Their things are all arranged, like they're planning to stay. Daniel pulled up the hotel database, scrolling through the guest records. There's no record of anyone checking into that room, not for years. He glanced at the wall where the old-fashioned key rack hung. The key to room 312 was missing. By that afternoon, hotel security had been called. Officer James Bennett from the local police department arrived shortly after, a man whose calm demeanor seemed at odds with the intensity in his eyes. As Maria led him and Daniel to the third floor, she noticed how the officer's gaze swept methodically across every detail of the hotel's interior. The room was supposed to be permanently unoccupied, Daniel explained as they approached 312. After what happened. "And what exactly happened?" Officer Bennett asked, removing a small notebook from his jacket pocket. Daniel hesitated. There was an incident back in 2008. A guest died in that room. Heart attack, they said, but there were complications with the body, legal issues. The hotel management at the time decided it was easier to just close the room permanently. Officer Bennett's pen hovered over the notebook. Name of the deceased. Robert Caldwell. He was a regular business traveler from Chicago. Inside room 312, nothing had changed since Maria's discovery that morning. The suitcase remained open, containing neatly folded clothes. The bathroom still held the precise arrangement of toiletries. Officer Bennett slipped on latex gloves and began to examine the items methodically. "The room doesn't seem disturbed," he noted. "More like someone just stepped out for a moment and plans to return." He picked up a leather wallet from the nightstand and opened it. Inside was a driver's license issued to Robert Caldwell of Chicago, Illinois. The expiration date was 2010. Next to it sat a hotel receipt dated October 17, 2008. Daniel's face paled as he looked over the officer's shoulder. "That's not possible," he whispered. "That's the day he died." Over the next 3 days, Detective Sarah Reeves was assigned to what the department was calling the Mayfair situation. A slender woman with prematurely gray hair and eyes that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light, she approached the case with methodical precision. She interviewed the hotel staff, reviewed old police reports, and spent hours sitting quietly in room 312, as if waiting for the walls to speak. "What we know is limited," she explained to Daniel and the hotel manager, Eleanor Ward, in the small conference room they'd repurposed as an investigation hub. Robert Caldwell checked into this hotel on October 15, 2008. He was found dead in his room on the morning of October 17. Cause of death was officially ruled as cardiac arrest. "That's right," Eleanor nodded. "I wasn't here then, but the records are clear." "What's less clear," Detective Reeves continued, "is what happened after his death. According to the original report, his body was removed and his personal effects sent to his next of kin. The room was cleaned and returned to service." She tapped a folder on the table. but hotel records show that room 312 was never rented again after October 17, 2008. The staff wouldn't go in there, Daniel said quietly. There were rumors that something wasn't right about how he died. The maid who found him quit the same day, never came back for her last paycheck. Detective Reeves opened the folder and slid out a photograph. This is Robert Caldwell from his driver's license. The image showed a middle-aged man with thinning hair and serious eyes. The strange thing is, she continued, we can't find any record of Robert Caldwell beyond his stay here. The address in Chicago belongs to an office building that was demolished in 2012. The company he supposedly worked for, Meridian Consulting, has no record of his employment. His social security number leads nowhere. A heavy silence settled over the room as the implications sank in. Alina was the first to speak. Are you saying he didn't exist? I'm saying, Detective Reeves replied carefully, that Robert Caldwell might not have been who he claimed to be. That evening, as darkness fell over the city, Detective Reeves returned to room 312 alone. She sat in the armchair by the window, the room illuminated only by the soft glow of a bedside lamp. The belongings remained untouched, arranged as if their owner had just stepped out momentarily. She opened the leather-bound notebook found in the suitcase, its pages filled with neat, precise handwriting observations about the hotel, notes about staff movements, detailed drawings of the building's layout. The final entry, dated October 17, 2008, read simply, "It ends where it began, room 312, full circle." A soft knock at the door broke her concentration. Daniel stood in the doorway, his shift having ended hours ago. "I found something," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "In the old storage room, a box of records from 2008. He handed her a yellowed newspaper clipping. "I think you should see this." The article, dated October 5, 1973, featured a blurry photograph of the Mayfair Hotel. The headline read, "Local man missing, last seen at downtown hotel." The story detailed the disappearance of Thomas Caldwell, a 32-year-old accountant who had checked into the Mayfair Hotel, room 312, and never checked out. His belongings were found in his room, arranged as if he just stepped out. No trace of him was ever found. "Thomas Caldwell," Detective Reeves murmured. "Any relation to our Robert?" "That's just it," Daniel replied. "I checked the old guest records. Thomas Caldwell stayed here every October for years before his disappearance, always in room 312. Just like Robert did decades later." Daniel nodded, and there's more. In 1943, a guest named William Caldwell was found dead in room 312. Heart attack. He was a regular guest too, always stayed in October. The pattern was unmistakable, unsettling in its precision. Every 30 years, a man named Caldwell, room 312, October. A cycle repeating itself with clockwork regularity. The following morning, Detective Reeves made a call to Chicago PD. By afternoon, she had her answer. Thomas Caldwell's body had been found in 1973, not in the hotel, but in his Chicago apartment. Cause of death, cardiac arrest. The same was true for William Caldwell in 1943. Both men had died on October 17, both officially hundreds of miles away from the Mayfair Hotel. "So who checked into the hotel using their names?" Alina asked, her voice strained. "And why?" Detective Reeves had no answer, only more questions. Why did the pattern repeat every 30 years? What significance did room 312 hold? And most pressing of all, what would happen now, in October 2025, 30 years after Robert Caldwell's death? As the investigation continued, the contents of room 312 remained exactly as they had been found. Not a single item disturbed despite the comings and goings of police personnel. The shaving brush stood at perfect attention next to the still-capped toothpaste. The suit jacket hung unwrinkled in the closet. Everything waiting, it seemed, for the return of a guest who had checked out decades ago. On the seventh day of the investigation, Maria approached Detective Reeves as she was leaving the hotel. "I found this," she said, holding out a small brass key. "It was under the bed in 312. I swear it wasn't there before." The key was old, its surface darkened with age. Engraved on its head was not a room number, but a date, 10/17/38. October 17, 1938, 30 years before William Caldwell. That night, Detective Reeves stayed at the Mayfair, in a room directly across from 312. She left her door slightly ajar, watching the corridor through the crack. The antique wall clock at the end of the hall ticked steadily, its sound echoing in the stillness. At exactly 3:12 a.m., the door to room 312 closed with a soft click. Detective Reeves stepped into the hallway immediately, her hand moving to the weapon at her hip. The corridor was empty, silent except for the persistent ticking of the clock. The door to 312 was now firmly shut, though she was certain it had been opened just moments before. Using her master key, she opened the door cautiously. The room was exactly as it had been, with one difference. The suitcase was closed now, the clothing no longer visible. On the bed lay a hotel receipt, dated October 17, 2025. Tomorrow's date. In the morning, room 312 was empty. No suitcase, no toiletries, no suit jacket in the closet, no evidence that anyone had ever stayed there. Only the hotel receipt remained on the immaculately made bed, its ink fresh and dark against the white paper. The case of the Mayfair Hotel was officially classified as unsolved. Room 312 was sealed once again, this time with new locks and a security system. Detective Reeves filed her report, detailing the strange cycle of the Caldwell guests and their perfect 30-year intervals. Her final note read, "Recommend monitoring of the Mayfair Hotel in October 2055 for possible recurrence of pattern." Years later, long after the Mayfair had been converted into luxury apartments, new residents would occasionally report strange occurrences in what had once been room 312. The sound of someone unpacking a suitcase, the faint scent of an old-fashioned cologne, the sensation of someone else in the room, just out of sight. And every 30 years, like clockwork, the current occupant would move out suddenly, citing personal reasons. The apartment would remain vacant for exactly 1 month before a new tenant arrived. No one ever stayed in October. Story 10. The old Polaroid held a forgotten birthday snapshot, frozen in time. Faces smiled, candles flickered, a scene of typical joy. Yet within the box of aged photos passed down to the daughter, a chilling discovery awaited. Amidst the group, a shape lurked in the background. A man, shrouded in shadow, lingered just beyond the candlelight's reach. He was not part of the family, a mysterious intruder in every frame. Sarah Winters unearthed the collection while sorting through her late mother's attic. A simple cardboard box labeled Memories revealed a trove of nostalgic images capturing past family gatherings. What should have brought solace soon transformed into a haunting enigma. In the initial photo, he loomed faintly a silhouette on the periphery during her 7th birthday festivity. The dark figure hovered by the glass door, features obscured, a silent observer. In the subsequent snapshot, he had advanced indoors. By the 3rd picture, he stood cloaked behind her uncle. None in the images seemed cognizant of his ominous presence. Trembling, Sarah contacted her father, questioning the mysterious man haunting the photographs. "Dad, who is this stranger in the background of all these pictures?" A moment of silence preceded his response, followed by a sharp intake of breath. "What man? There should be no one but family." Sharing digital copies of the Polaroids with her father, Sarah awaited his reaction. His subsequent call revealed a rare vulnerability in his voice. "This is impossible. We would have noticed an outsider." Detective Marcus Reed attentively listened as Sarah laid out the photos on his desk at the precinct. Rain tapped rhythmically against the windows, casting dancing shadows over the evidence. The detective's weathered hands meticulously studied each photo, his gaze narrowing in concentration. "No one recognized this individual?" he inquired, his tone composed yet intrigued. "No one," Sarah affirmed, but observed the progression. Rearranging the photos in sequence, she highlighted the unsettling evolution. Leaning in, the detective observed as a sense of disquiet settled in. The figure navigated purposefully through the gathering, advancing incrementally towards the children. In the final image, he loomed directly behind Sarah's youthful form, a pale hand reaching towards her shoulder just beyond the frame. "The photographer," Reed postulated, though doubt tinged his words. "My mother took all these pictures." She set the timer and positioned herself in the frame. Replicating the images and initiating a case file, the detective embarked on a thorough investigation. Contacting surviving attendees from the party, he encountered unanimous denial of recognizing the mysterious man. No hired servers, no visiting neighbors, only a secluded countryside setting chosen for privacy. Facial recognition software yielded no results, the figure strategically obscured in every shot, as if cognizant of the camera's gaze. Yet a practiced intentionality emanated from his posture. The inquiry might have stagnated had Sarah not stumbled upon additional photos in other family albums. Diverse occasions, disparate years. The enigmatic figure persisted in the background, perpetually unnoticed in the moment. A digital specialist enhanced the images, unveiling hidden details under the stark light. A scar across the wrist, a distinctive ring. A partial reflection in a window revealing previously obscured facial features. A breakthrough emerged from dental records. The teeth visible in one enhanced photo matched those of Robert Keller, a maintenance worker linked to long cold cases of child abductions across the region. Instances that had baffled authorities for decades. Instances that coincided with the documented gatherings in the photos. Keller had been employed by the company responsible for cleaning the vacation property of Sarah's childhood birthday celebration. Possessing master keys to various rental properties in the vicinity, locations where other families had convened, locations where children had later vanished. Upon excavating the grounds of Keller's former abode, authorities unearthed poignant artifacts buried beneath the concrete. A hair clip akin to one worn by a missing girl, a toy car belonging to a boy who vanished post a family reunion, a bracelet recognized by Sarah as her childhood possession, thought lost. Alone in her apartment, surrounded by the unraveling of concealed horrors within the photos, Sarah received a call from the detective. Remains discovered adjacent to a vacation property had been identified through DNA an abducted child. Gazing at the final birthday photo, warmth emanated from the candles illuminating her family's jubilant faces. And yet behind her younger self, obscured by shadow yet undeniably present, the mysterious figure observed, patient, calculating, invisible in the midst of festivity. The revelation connected long-dormant cases across generations. Families obtained closure, albeit not the solace they sought. The shadow in the family photos had stepped into the realm of justice, his presence acknowledged after years of anonymity. Sarah tenderly gathered the photos, returning them to the box as tangible evidence. a stark reminder that peril sometimes masquerades in the form of unseen entities captured on film phantoms that glide through celebrations unnoticed, leaving faint traces of their passage in frozen moments of time. Story 11, the apartment exuded an ancient aura, its walls holding secrets whispered through time. The heating system groaned, the pipes rattled, creating a symphony of creaks and murmurs that echoed through the empty rooms. To the casual observer, it was just the typical sounds of an old building settling in for the night. But within these walls, a chilling mystery unfolded. Detective Morgan Shaw found herself drawn into the enigmatic depths of the vacant apartment. Her footsteps echoed softly on the worn floorboards as she stood in the center of the dimly lit room, her gaze fixed on the rusted vent cover that seemed to beckon her closer. The forensics team moved around her with quiet precision, their cameras capturing the haunting stillness of the scene. Alina Reeves, the missing woman whose fate had led Shaw to this place, had vanished without a trace until the scent of decay had finally alerted the authorities. And what they discovered within the confines of the ventilation system defied logic and reason. Officer Patel's voice cut through the hushed atmosphere as he recounted Alina's claims of hearing voices through the vents. The building management had dismissed her pleas as mere figments of an overactive imagination, attributing the strange noises to the building's antiquity. But Shaw knew there was more to the story than met the eye. Kneeling beside the vent, Shaw traced her fingers along the edges, noting the deep gouges that marred the metal surface. These marks told a silent tale of desperation, of someone trapped within, clawing frantically for freedom. The realization sent a shiver down Shaw's spine. Alina Reeves, a beloved kindergarten teacher with a penchant for nurturing life, had succumbed to a paranoia that had consumed her in the days leading up to her disappearance. Her sister's trembling voice had painted a picture of a woman haunted by unseen forces, tormented by whispers that crept through the vents like ghostly fingers. As Shaw pieced together the fragments of Alina's life scattered throughout the apartment, a sense of unease settled over her. The meticulous arrangement of the room, the chair positioned beneath the vent as if waiting for a spectral visitor, all hinted at a presence that lingered just beyond the realm of the living. The evidence collected by the forensics team painted a chilling portrait of a predator lurking in the shadows of the building. Fibers from Alina's clothing trapped in the vent grating, a mysterious fingerprint on the inside of the cover, it all pointed to a sinister truth hidden within these walls. The audio recordings recovered from Alina's phone revealed a haunting dialogue between her and an unseen entity. Shaw listened in silence, the rain tapping a melancholy rhythm on the roof of her car, as the spectral voice whispered through the speakers, a siren song luring its victim into the abyss. Delving into the building's past unearthed a history steeped in darkness. Tenants had come and gone, their lives intertwined with the building's malevolent legacy. Reports of hallucinations, unexplained noises, and a pervasive sense of dread filled the records, leading Shaw down a twisted path of secrets long buried. Harold Weber, the enigmatic building superintendent with a facade of indifference, emerged as a central figure in the unfolding drama. His calm demeanor belied a hidden truth, a connection to the darkness that lurked within the building's walls. Shaw's probing questions elicited a subtle shift in his demeanor, a crack in the facade that hinted at a sinister truth. The discovery of a hidden access panel in Alina's bathroom opened a gateway to a realm of horrors previously unseen. A labyrinthine maintenance passage snaking through the walls, a hidden vantage point from which to observe and torment unsuspecting victims, It was a revelation that sent chills down Shaw's spine. A search of Weber's meticulously maintained apartment yielded a trove of incriminating evidence. Organized files detailing his twisted obsessions, audio recordings capturing intimate moments of his victims' lives, a digital journal chronicling his descent into madness, it all painted a damning picture of a man consumed by darkness. The revelation of a storage unit filled with relics of past victims solidified Weber's descent into madness. Jewelry, photographs, clothing all preserved like macabre trophies of a twisted game played out in the shadows. Shaw felt a chill grip her heart as she realized the extent of Weber's depravity. Arrested in the dead of night, Weber's serene smile in the face of justice sent a shiver through those present. His cryptic words, his unwavering belief in the building's malevolent influence, spoke of a madness that transcended mere human understanding. As the trial unfolded, Shaw bore witness to a chilling spectacle of a mind consumed by darkness. Weber's claims of symbiosis with the building, his delusions of grandeur intertwined with the whispers that haunted the walls, painted a portrait of a man lost to the shadows. The jury's swift verdict of guilt was a testament to the gravity of Weber's crimes. As he was led away, his eyes locked with Shaw's, a chilling smile playing on his lips. His parting words echoed through the halls of the courtroom, a haunting reminder of the darkness that still lingered within the building's walls. The apartment building now stood as a hollow shell, its corridors haunted by the echoes of past horrors. Despite the veneer of normalcy imposed by renovations and fresh paint, the residents knew the truth that lay hidden within the walls. Whispers carried on the cold drafts that seeped through the vents, a spectral reminder of the darkness that lurked within. The building's legacy of terror endured, a chilling testament to the mysteries that lay buried in its ancient bones. And as the night fell and the building settled into an uneasy slumber, the whispers never ceased, a spectral chorus that sang of secrets long forgotten. And so, the apartment building stood, a silent sentinel guarding its dark history, waiting for the next unsuspecting soul to heed the call of the whispers in the walls. Story 12. The town held its secrets close, especially the house at the edge of the woods. It stood silent and forgotten, its windows dark, its porch weary from time's weight. No one laid claim to it. No one could recall its origin. Yet when a group of wanderers strayed too near, they beheld an eerie sight, names etched into the wooden walls, carved deep like ominous whispers. At the end of the list, fresh and untouched, was a name unfamiliar to all. Until a trembling voice among them uttered, "That's mine." In the dead of night, the call came in. Dispatch logged it as a routine trespassing incident. The voice at the other end belonged to Mason Wright, the leader of the hikers who had stumbled upon his own name carved into the forsaken dwelling. The responding officers expected mere mischief, perhaps a prank gone awry, but what awaited them defied logic. Detective Sarah Keller arrived as twilight blanketed the forest. Her flashlight pierced the darkness, revealing the weathered face of the structure. 27 names adorned the eastern wall, some fading into obscurity, others sharp as if freshly inscribed. And at the bottom, Mason Wright, the incision still redolent of sawdust. "I've never set foot here before," Mason insisted, his breath forming mist in the chill air. "I cannot fathom how my name came to be here." The inquiry commenced with scrutinizing the backgrounds of each listed name. The findings sent shivers through the investigative team. Every name belonged to an individual reported missing over the past 40 years. Some cases had grown cold, while others remained unresolved. But all shared a chilling similarity: the vanished had been solitary hikers. Forensic experts meticulously documented each carving, noting the depths, techniques, and aging imprints. The oldest name, Rebecca Hansen, aligned with a disappearance case from nearly 4 decades prior. Accounts spoke of a young woman who ventured into these very woods and never returned, leaving behind only a lone hiking boot by a stream. Detective Keller probed Mason's story extensively. His narrative remained steadfast. He had no ties to the area beyond this fateful hike with his college companions. They had selected the trail at random, guided by an online suggestion. Nothing in his past connected him to the other names adorning the wall. The focus shifted to Mason's comrades. Emily Chen, the group's photographer, supplied snapshots taken during their journey. Upon scrutiny, analysts detected something disquieting: a blurred figure lurking in the background of 3 distinct photos. A tall, slender shape, always partially obscured by foliage. "We encountered no one else on our trek," Emily affirmed. "We would have remembered." Detective Keller sanctioned a search of the house's interior. Though the edifice seemed abandoned, with dust shrouding every surface and furniture in disarray, the basement concealed a ghastly revelation. Personal effects of the missing hikers were meticulously arranged on wooden shelves: watches, backpacks, cameras, wallets, each item labeled with a corresponding name from outside. As technicians diligently cataloged the evidence, blood patterns emerged under ultraviolet light on the concrete floor, evidence of years past attempts at scrubbing. Despite the cadaver dog's alerts at the forest's rear, no bodies were found buried beneath the house. Amidst the escalating investigation, Detective Keller observed peculiar behavior in Mason Wright. He reported inexplicable phenomena: whispers in the dead of night, fresh footprints leading to his door but none departing, shadowy figures observing from afar. Despite assigned police protection, Mason's paranoia swelled. A breakthrough surfaced when buried land records surfaced in county archives. The property had been owned by a reclusive hunter named Victor Blackwood. Neighbors recollected fleeting encounters with an unnervingly tall, emaciated man who shunned interaction. Blackwood vanished without a trace 15 years prior, his disappearance uninvestigated. With a warrant secured, Detective Keller extended the search into the surrounding woods. A team unearthed crude hunting blinds strategically stationed along popular trails. Within one blind lay a journal brimming with meticulous observations, depictions of hikers, their paths, gear, and behaviors. The script mirrored samples from Blackwood's sparse documents. The entries grew increasingly sinister, transitioning from animal hunting techniques to human quarry, detailing habits, vulnerabilities, and target selection processes. A manhunt ensued for Blackwood, spanning jurisdictions. Helicopters equipped with thermal imaging scoured the forest. Tactical squads combed every crevice and cavern, yet the suspect remained elusive. Mason Wright fell off the grid. Officers dispatched to his residence found it empty, with a chilling message freshly etched on his bedroom wall: "The hunter becomes the hunted." The search for Mason persisted fruitlessly, but during a subsequent sweep of Blackwood's home, forensic experts unearthed the disturbing secret. Concealed behind a false panel in the basement lay a workshop equipped with woodworking tools, jars of preservatives, and a freshly carved wooden piece bearing a name that struck fear in Detective Keller's heart. It belonged to the lead forensic technician who had processed the house initially, absent due to illness. Authorities encircled the house with continuous surveillance. Cameras monitored every approach, motion sensors on high alert. The trap was set. 3 nights later, sensors blared an alert. Security footage captured an unearthly figure emerging from the woods, impossibly tall, unnaturally slender, moving with an eerie grace. As tactical units closed in, the cameras briefly faltered. Upon restoration, the figure had vanished, leaving no trace. To this day, the house remains under vigilant watch. Mason Wright and the technician were never located. The investigation persists, with fresh resources allocated as akin disappearances surface in wooded regions. The names on the wall have become lore among law enforcement, some refusing to utter them aloud, others steering clear of the case entirely. Local hikers skirt the house, fearing that merely mentioning it might add their names to that dreadful tally, the names unspoken. Story 13. The quaint coffee shop had become a familiar sanctuary for him over the years. Each day he would claim his regular table, place his customary order, and immerse himself in the soothing ambience of silence. The barista recognized his face, but his name remained a mystery to all. Then one day he failed to make his usual appearance. When law enforcement investigated his absence, they stumbled upon a peculiar discovery. Left behind on his accustomed seat was a wallet. Inside, a driver's license displayed a photograph, yet the space reserved for his identity was eerily blank, devoid of a name or address. Detective Sarah Mercer delved into the case, her fingertips grazing the cold metal table as she meticulously scrutinized the security footage. The enigmatic figure, now dubbed John Doe in the investigative records, appeared unassuming on the screen. Average in height with unremarkable features, clad in a navy coat and carrying a weathered leather messenger bag. His unobtrusive presence made his inexplicable vanishing act all the more unsettling. "Replay it," Mercer instructed the tech specialist. The footage revealed John's entrance into the coffee shop during the bustling morning hours. He ordered his usual plain black coffee, no sugar, and settled at the secluded corner table partially veiled by a decorative plant. Engrossed in his activities, he retrieved a notebook from his bag and began to write. At intervals, he would sip his coffee and gaze out the window. Then came the pivotal moment, placing his wallet on the table, rising and strolling toward the restroom corridor. However, he never returned to his spot, never exited through any doorway. He simply vanished into thin air. "Examine the restroom footage," Mercer requested. "There's a catch," responded the specialist. "He never entered any restroom. We've scrutinized every camera angle. It's as if he evaporated into nothingness." Back at the precinct, Mercer meticulously spread the contents of the abandoned wallet across her desk. The driver's license photo corresponded to the enigmatic man, yet the personal details were conspicuously absent, replaced by blank voids. The credit cards bore no names, only strings of 16-digit numbers that led to non-existent accounts upon investigation. Neatly arranged cash in various denominations, a receipt from the coffee shop dated 3 days prior, and a solitary business card, both sides blank except for a faintly printed phone number. Upon dialing the number, Mercer was met with silence on the other end, punctuated by the subtle rustle of paper, akin to the turning of pages. After 30 seconds of eerie quiet, the call abruptly terminated. The barista who had served John for years could offer scant information. He seldom spoke, always courteous though generous with his tips. I believe he may have had an accent, but his voice was so hushed it was hard to discern. "Did he ever engage with anyone here, hold conversations?" Mercer inquired. "Never. Always solitary, always engrossed in that notebook." The notebook lay abandoned on the table beside the wallet, its pages adorned with rows of what seemed to be encrypted code. Cryptographers within the department struggled to decipher its contents. Among the cryptic scripts were architectural sketches of buildings unfamiliar to the area. Mercer dispatched officers to canvass the vicinity with John Doe's photographs. No one could identify him. No missing persons reports matched his description. His fingerprints yielded no matches in any database. It was as though he existed solely within the confines of that coffee shop. During her inquiry, Mercer discerned an anomaly in the security footage. Each morning John entered the shop, the timestamp on the camera would momentarily flicker. While the tech specialist dismissed it as a technical glitch, Mercer harbored doubts. Returning to the coffee shop, she seated herself at his table. From this perspective, she could surveil both the entrance and the hallway leading to the restrooms. Suspended between them was an antique mirror, intricately embellished with symbols reminiscent of those in John's notebook. Upon the owner's arrival, Mercer probed him about the mirror. "That old thing, it predates my tenure, came with the building. A cumbersome piece requires 2 men to shift it." "Has it ever been relocated for cleaning or remodeling?" Mercer inquired. "Not in my time, why do you ask?" Approaching the mirror, Mercer scrutinized her reflection. The glass exuded a faint distortion, lending her reflection an uncanny depth. Expecting the chill of glass, she was met with an unexpected warmth upon touching its surface. Upon the arrival of the forensics team to scrutinize the mirror, a concealed compartment was unveiled behind it. Nestled within were identical wallets, each bearing a driver's license with the same photo, but bereft of any personal information. Adjacent lay a leather-bound journal brimming with entries dating back decades, inscribed in the identical hand as the notebook abandoned on the table. The final entry ominously proclaimed, "The experiment must cease. They draw near. The portal is closing." Traces of John Doe's fingerprints were scattered throughout the concealed space. Carbon dating of the earliest wallet suggested it was approximately 50 years old, yet the countenance in the photograph remained unaltered. The journal entries alluded to experiments in temporal displacement and identity transference, referencing crossing back and portal points. One excerpt seized Mercer's attention. The coffee shop acts as a nexus, a juncture where realities converge. The mirror serves as the threshold. When alignment transpires, transit becomes viable. As the investigation progressed, peculiar occurrences unfurled in the vicinity of the coffee shop. Patrons reported witnessing their reflections moving autonomously in the window glass. Some professed glimpses of John Doe seated at his usual table, though surveillance cameras refuted their claims. The breakthrough in the case materialized when an elderly woman reached out to the police station regarding the investigation. Introducing herself as Margaret Keller, she disclosed her background as a former physicist involved in classified governmental endeavors. She identified John Doe as Daniel Weston from the media reports. "His name was Daniel Weston," she elucidated. "A brilliant theoretical physicist who vanished while engrossed in an experimental venture concerning quantum mirror surfaces with the potential to facilitate interreality transit." Keller furnished documents verifying Weston's presumed demise subsequent to a laboratory mishap. The date of his disappearance aligned with the earliest entry in the journal unearthed behind the mirror. "He postulated that our reality coexists with numerous others," Keller expounded. He hypothesized that certain locales function as feeble points between these realities, locales where one could potentially traverse. Equipped with this newfound knowledge, Mercer revisited the coffee shop. She ascertained that the edifice was erected atop the grounds once occupied by the very research facility where Weston had twalled. The establishment had been constructed directly atop the laboratory from which he had vanished. The apex of the case unfolded when, during a solitary late-night review of the security footage, Mercer discerned an overlooked detail in the recordings. Within the mirror's reflection, John Doe Daniel Weston observed himself seated at the table, two iterations of the same man coexisting concurrently. Rushing to the coffee shop to reassess the mirror, Mercer was greeted by the sight of shattered glass strewn across the floor. Amidst the shards, a final missive inscribed in the familiar script lay, "The experiment is concluded. The gateway is sealed. Do not pursue." The enigma of the Phantom Man persists as an unsolved enigma. The coffee shop shuttered soon after the investigation, and the structure was ultimately razed. Daniel Weston's remains remained undiscovered. His journals and notebooks vanished from the evidence vault under cryptic circumstances. Shortly after, Detective Mercer relinquished her post within the force. Locals occasionally glimpse her perched on her veranda, fervently transcribing in a journal akin to Weston's. Adorning her wall hangs a fragment of an ancient mirror, its surface intermittently rippling when unobserved. Story 14. In the hushed stillness of the night, a pocket dial echoed through the darkness, a mere whisper of static and muffled sounds that nearly went unnoticed by the vigilant operator. But then a voice sliced through the obscurity like a sharp blade. A woman's urgent whisper pierced the void. "He's here." Abruptly, the voice vanished into silence, leaving behind a chilling void. The mysterious call had originated from a number linked to an abandoned house, its walls steeped in solitude for years. No signs of intrusion marred the silent abode, no traces of disturbance lingered in the air. Yet in the heart of the desolate kitchen, the phone lay upon the counter, its screen softly aglow with an ethereal light. Detective Morgan Reed, her mind shrouded in perplexity, pressed the playback button once more, the haunting whisper resonating in her ears like a ghostly lament, desperate, terrified, and utterly inexplicable. The property, once home to the Sullivan family before a devastating fire forced them to flee, stood as a relic of bygone memories. The caretaker's sworn testimony attested to the house's untouched state, undisturbed by human presence for years. Background check on the number, Morgan inquired of her partner, Detective Walsh. The revelation that the number belonged to Catherine Sullivan, the deceased daughter of the family, only deepened the enigmatic enigma. Catherine had perished in a tragic car accident 3 years prior, her existence reduced to fleeting memories and sorrowful whispers. As Morgan gazed upon the evidence bag cradling the enigmatic phone, a sense of unease crept into her thoughts. The inexplicable nature of a deceased woman's phone emitting calls from a deserted dwelling defied all logical explanation. The forensic team's exhaustive search yielded no tangible leads, no fingerprints adorned the device save for elusive smudges that defied identification. No footprints marred the pristine dust of the kitchen floor. It was as though the phone had materialized out of thin air, a spectral presence haunting the abandoned house. The recording of the mysterious call emerged as the focal point of their investigation, a mere 11 seconds of static, fragmented breathing, and 5 chilling words that echoed in the recesses of their minds. Voice analysis confirmed a startling revelation. The whispered voice bore a striking resemblance to Catherine Sullivan's, with an accuracy rating of 98%. Even more perplexing, the timestamp revealed that the call had transpired at the precise moment of Catherine's tragic demise, down to the very minute. Morgan and Walsh delved into the lives of those who had known Catherine intimately. Her father, now remarried, appeared genuinely bewildered by the inexplicable events unfolding. Her mother, a solitary figure in a modest apartment, crumbled upon hearing the spectral recording. "That's my Katie," she murmured, her voice trembling with sorrow. The shadows of suspicion loomed over Catherine's former boyfriend, Mark Jennings, yet his alibi for the night of the call remained airtight. He had been diligently toiling away during a hospital night shift, corroborated by numerous witnesses and surveillance footage. The riddle persisted. How could a call originate from an empty house, defying all rationality and reason? A breakthrough arrived in the form of a call from Catherine's grieving mother, her voice fraught with trepidation. "I found something in her possessions," she divulged, her words laden with sorrow. Katie kept a journal, the final entry. "You must see it." Within the weathered pages of the journal lay a tale of love turned sinister, of control, isolation, and unbridled fear. The last entry bore an ominous message. "He discovered my intentions to leave. His rage knows no bounds. If harm befalls me, it shall not be by chance." Confronted with the damning evidence unearthed from the journal, Mark's facade of composure crumbled under the weight of suspicion. "You believe I harmed Katie based on her words," he retorted, his voice tinged with defiance. "That is no proof." Morgan, undeterred, pointed to the anomaly of Mark's premature arrival at the scene of Catherine's accident, preceding even the emergency responders. "How did you locate her vehicle on that desolate road?" she probed, her gaze unwavering. A revisit to the site of Catherine's fatal crash unveiled a startling revelation. Buried beneath the earth, a phone, Catherine's true device, concealed 20 feet from the wreckage. The phone recovered from the abandoned house served as a mere decoy, a pawn in a malevolent game of deception. Forensic scrutiny of the buried phone unraveled a sinister narrative encoded within deleted messages exchanged between Catherine and her sister on the fateful night. "Mark is tailing me in his vehicle. He seeks to drive me off the road, and later, he is coercing me into peril." A revaluation of Catherine's autopsy photographs by the medical examiner unveiled a grim truth obscured by shadows of deceit. The injuries she bore transcended the realm of a mere car crash, bearing the telltale signs of struggle and asphyxiation. As the net of suspicion tightened around Mark, the truth veiled in darkness began to surface, revealing a harrowing tale of manipulation and violence. When the officers descended upon Mark's dwelling to effect his arrest, they found naught but an eerie shrine dedicated to Catherine, a macabre collection of stolen mementos, photographs, and morbid relics entwined with his twisted obsession. Amidst his possessions lay the tools of deception and audio manipulation software, and a blueprint detailing the creation of the spectral call that had confounded investigators and tormented Catherine's bereaved kin. As the trial unfolded, the jury swiftly rendered its verdict, guilty of first-degree murder. The echoes of justice reverberated through the courtroom, a semblance of closure for those ensnared in the web of deceit and treachery. Catherine's mother clutched her daughter's journal tightly to her chest, a silent tribute to the enduring legacy of her beloved child, a legacy of resilience, of voices silenced yet resounding in the corridors of truth. The abandoned phone, a relic of a spectral call that defied the confines of mortality, now rests within the evidence locker, its presence a testament to the enduring power of a victim's voice. Some claim to hear its phantom ring echoing through the halls, a spectral reminder of the truths that linger beyond the veil of silence. Catherine's story lives on, not as a mere ghostly tale, but as a testament to the indomitable spirit of those who find solace in the echoes of their silenced voices, resolute in their quest for justice and redemption. Story 15: The Mystery of the Whispering House. She longed to redecorate the nursery before the little one's arrival. The walls, once a faded blue full of untold tales, were now being coated with a fresh layer of white paint. But as the brush swept across the surface, an unexpected discovery emerged. Hidden beneath the layers, faint letters gradually materialized, forming a cryptic message. Don't let it hear you. Her heart skipped a beat as she took a step back, her eyes scanning the room. And there it was, the imprint of tiny handprints in the still wet paint, positioned too high for any child to reach. This eerie revelation in the nursery of the Morgan house marked the inception of what would later be known as the Whispering House case. The young couple had acquired the Victorian-style home for a suspiciously low price, unaware of its dark past. Detective Sarah Klein arrived at the residence, a notepad clutched in her hand, and was greeted by a pregnant woman, her belly protruding beneath splattered overalls. The woman's weary eyes and trembling hands hinted at sleepless nights as she recounted the unsettling discovery. According to her, the previous owners had vanished overnight, leaving behind only essential belongings packed into their car. The detective explored the historic house, the floorboards creaking beneath her feet. In the nursery, the unfinished wall paint still revealed the ominous message and the ghostly handprints. Back at the precinct, Detective Klein delved into the property's history. The house had changed hands numerous times in 3 decades, with families fleeing after brief stays. Child welfare reports hinted at disturbing occurrences, with children speaking of whispers and unseen watchers. Further investigation unveiled the house's previous owner, Eleanor Blackwood, a widow who once ran an orphanage on the premises. 5 children had vanished during her tenure, their fate a mystery until now. Residents' accounts of peculiar happenings aligned with the unearthed secrets, leading to a chilling revelation. The detective's persistence led to a harrowing discovery. Beneath the basement floor, 5 child-sized shapes detected by radar. Breaking through the concrete confirmed the grim truth: 5 sets of remains, each child wearing a pendant engraved with their name. Luminol revealed a haunting sight in the nursery, countless handprints glowing in the dark, a silent testament to the trapped soul's desperate attempts to escape. Eleanor's journals exposed her macabre intentions, believing she could extend her life through the children's energy. With the victims finally laid to rest, the house stood empty, its dark legacy casting a long shadow. Detective Klein's report documented the eerie handprints and the spectral presence that lingered in the abandoned dwelling. The nursery walls were torn down, but whispers persisted among the debris, driving workers away. The house met its end, condemned and shrouded in mystery, a chilling reminder of crimes that transcend time. The detective preserved a photograph of the luminous handprints, a poignant reminder that some horrors cannot be erased, even with layers of fresh paint. Story 16, the mysterious echoes of the past lingered in the old Victorian manor, a place where time seemed to bend and secrets whispered through the walls. The new homeowners, Daniel and Meredith Parker, were drawn to the charm of the house, but they soon realized that there was more to their new abode than met the eye. Late at night, the crackling intercom system would come to life, filling the quiet rooms with static and whispers. It was a relic of a bygone era, a connection to a history long forgotten. Daniel and Meredith brushed it off as a quirky feature of the house they had come to love. But one fateful night, curiosity got the best of Daniel. He pressed the button on the intercom, and a chilling whisper pierced through the speaker, asking, "Why did you come back?" His hands trembled as he recoiled in shock. His wife, standing behind him, denied ever uttering those words. The intercom became a conduit for something beyond their understanding, a portal to a past shrouded in darkness. Meredith revealed a hidden secret, a journal found behind a wall, its pages yellowed with age, chronicling the harrowing tale of Eleanor and Vincent Blackwood, the house's previous owners. Detective Sarah Reeves was called to investigate, her keen intuition sensing that there was more to the story than a simple break-in. As she delved deeper into the house's history, a chilling truth emerged. Aliner's voice, silenced long ago, echoed through the static of the intercom, seeking justice for the crime that had been buried for decades. Vincent Blackwood's carefully constructed facade crumbled under the weight of evidence, revealing a dark truth hidden beneath the floorboards of the old manor. His confession sent shivers down the detective's spine, his calm demeanor belying the heinous act he had committed. As the case unfolded, the house itself seemed to bear witness to the long-buried secrets that had haunted its halls. The whispers of the past lingered in the air, a reminder of the price paid for silence and the power of voices long silenced. In the end, justice prevailed, but the echoes of the past remained, woven into the very fabric of the house. Daniel and Meredith, unable to shake the specter of the past, bid farewell to the old manor, leaving behind the intercom system that had bridged the gap between worlds. Detective Reeves, driving past the house one last time, felt a sense of closure as she listened to the whispers carried on the breeze. The house had answered back, its secrets laid bare for all to hear, a testament to the enduring power of the past in shaping the present. Story 17. In the depths of the attic, concealed beneath a worn blanket, a discovery awaited. A porcelain doll, ancient and fragile, with eyes of deep blue that seemed to hold secrets untold. Sarah and Michael, a young couple who had recently acquired the Victorian house, stumbled upon this peculiar find. At first, they dismissed it as just another forgotten relic of the past, a mere trinket left behind by previous inhabitants. Yet as night descended and they retired to their bed, a subtle unease settled upon the air. The stillness around them seemed to stretch endlessly, wrapping them in a cocoon of silence. And when morning light filtered through the windows, the doll was no longer nestled in the attic shadows. It now perched ominously at the foot of their bed, its gaze unwavering and unsettling. Sarah and Michael had been captivated by the allure of the old house, enchanted by its intricate woodwork and whispered tales of a troubled history. Little did they know that their fascination would entwine them in a narrative far darker than they could have imagined. Detective Rachel Winters, a meticulous investigator with a keen eye for detail, was summoned to the scene on a crisp autumn morning. The master bedroom held a macabre tableau. The female victim posed in a contorted manner, her eyes wide with terror, while the male victim seemed frozen in a desperate attempt to flee. No signs of forced entry, no traces of a struggle, just an eerie stillness that lingered like a foreboding whisper. As Detective Winters delved into the puzzle, a pattern began to emerge. Neighbors whispered of seeing shadows flit behind curtained windows, of hearing ghostly laughter echoing through the empty halls in the dead of night. The forensic team uncovered traces of antique fabrics, remnants of a bygone era, scattered strategically around the crime scene. It was as though the very essence of the house itself was woven into the fabric of the crime. Digging deeper into the history of the property, Detective Winters unearthed a dark tale from the past, a tale of a reclusive doll maker and his tragic daughter. Whispers of arcane rituals and whispered secrets surrounded the dollmaker's creations, imbuing them with a life of their own. The final doll he crafted, a haunting replica of his deceased child, seemed to hold a power beyond the realm of the living. Each victim, it seemed, had unwittingly trespassed upon a legacy of sorrow and obsession intertwined with the house itself. Sarah and Michael, innocently embarking on renovations in the attic, had unknowingly awakened a malevolent force that had slumbered for decades. The investigation took a surreal turn when hidden photographs revealed the dollmaker's sinister collection, the doll at the center of it all appearing to shift positions as if alive. Invisible handprints trailed a chilling path from the attic to the master bedroom, leaving behind a residue of porcelain dust and enigmatic substances that defied classification. A distant relative of the doll maker whispered tales of dark arts and forbidden knowledge, hinting at a world where dolls were more than mere playthings. They were vessels for spirits bound by ancient rituals. The line between reality and nightmare blurred as the investigation spiraled into a realm beyond reason. Despite her best efforts, Detective Winters found herself at an impasse. No suspects, no tangible leads, only a sense of impending dread that clung to the case like a shroud. The doll, held in custody as evidence, vanished without a trace, leaving behind a trail of questions and shadows that refused to be dispelled. The house, tainted by a legacy of tragedy, changed hands once more, its dark past a whispered cautionary tale among those who knew its history. The attic, now empty save for a solitary blanket, bore silent witness to the mysteries that lingered within its walls. And so, the tale of Sarah and Michael, of Detective Winters and the enigmatic doll, faded into obscurity. But on quiet nights, when the world slumbered and the shadows danced, whispers of a child's laughter and a spectral presence in the attic lingered in the air, a reminder of a darkness that could never truly be exorcised. Story 18. In the stillness of a quiet suburban neighborhood, a mysterious key arrived in a plain envelope for Sarah Miller. Worn with age, the brass key seemed out of place, yet strangely familiar to her. Despite her efforts, none of her locks responded to its touch. Perplexed, she placed it on her coffee table, only to hear the broken grandfather clock in the hallway emit a solitary, haunting chime. Sarah, unsettled by this strange occurrence, reported it to the authorities. Initially dismissed as a simple mishap, the key soon unraveled a chilling criminal investigation that would shake the peaceful community to its core. Detective Robert Harmon, a seasoned investigator with a keen intuition, delved into the case file. The brass key sat on his desk, its presence quietly disturbing. Background checks on Sarah revealed no red flags, no hint of wrongdoing. She appeared to be an ordinary woman caught in an extraordinary situation. Forensic analysis yielded little except for Sarah's fingerprints on the key. The key itself, a standard Schlage, held no extraordinary secrets. But when Harmon ran its unique bidding pattern through the database, a cold case from years ago resurfaced, a storage unit tied to blood, tools, and unidentified women. The original investigation had hit dead ends, but Harmon's persistence led to a breakthrough. A distant familial match pointed to Harold Jenkins, a former neighbor of Sarah's with a shadowy past. Jenkins, a quiet figure who had slipped under the radar, now loomed large in the investigation. As the search for Jenkins intensified, a macabre discovery at a cabin linked him to a string of unspeakable crimes. Dozens of brass keys, each with a name and date, hinted at hidden horrors. The excavation behind the cabin revealed a grim truth: multiple victims buried in the earth. Fear gripped the community as the manhunt for Jenkins expanded nationwide. Dubbed the Keymaster, he had orchestrated a reign of terror unnoticed for years. The hunt for him led to a remote wilderness where a final confrontation ended in his tragic demise. In the aftermath, evidence emerged of Jenkins' twisted obsessions and meticulously documented atrocities. The journal he left behind spoke of a dark fixation on Sarah, a chilling revelation of his sinister intentions. The investigation uncovered 32 victims, bringing closure to families long haunted by disappearances. Sarah, forever changed by the ordeal, could never return to her home, haunted by the darkness that had touched her life. The case of the Keymaster remains a stark reminder of the evil that can lurk behind a facade of normalcy. As researchers delve into Jenkins' writings for insights, the silent brass keys in the evidence locker stand as a solemn testament to lives lost and the enduring truth of hidden horrors. Story 19. As she crossed the threshold, a dance of dusk greeted her in the stagnant air of the abandoned house. Years of neglect had left the walls peeling and the furniture cloaked in ghostly sheets. Each step she took felt like tiptoeing into a frozen slice of time, frozen in a mysterious stillness that whispered forgotten tales save for one peculiar detail that set her heart adrift in a sea of curiosity. The doors. Every door she opened, every handle she turned, all led her back to where she started the parlor. A perplexing maze where escape seemed an illusion, an enigma woven into the very fabric of the house. The only way out was the way she came in. But as she turned to retrace her steps, the front door had vanished into thin air, leaving her stranded in a labyrinth of forgotten memories. The revelation of Morgan Pierce's lifeless form turned the once abandoned Victorian into a haunting crime scene, shrouded in a veil of mystery and tragedy. Detective Sarah Lynn stood at the threshold, her gaze following the spectral movements of forensic technicians as they navigated the dim interior, their presence akin to fleeting shadows in the night. The house had garnered a reputation among the locals, a place where compasses spun wildly and whispers of unseen eyes watching lingered in the air. But now it held secrets far darker than mere superstitions and urban legends. The initial examination suggests she passed 3 days prior, the medical examiner murmured, his words barely audible in the solemn atmosphere. The cause of death appears to be asphyxiation. Morgan's serene visage, seated in an antique chair in the parlor, faced the entrance as if awaiting a long-lost visitor. No signs of struggle marred her peaceful countenance, no traces of a battle fought within those walls that now held witness to a silent tragedy. The scene exuded a chilling tranquility that sent shivers down the spines of seasoned investigators, a stillness pregnant with unanswered questions. Lind inquired, her voice a soft ripple in the sea of quiet contemplation, who discovered her. Her partner replied, recounting how a real estate agent, showing the property to potential buyers, stumbled upon the haunting sight of Morgan's figure in repose, mistaken at first for a trespasser until closer inspection revealed the grim reality. The house had stood vacant since the passing of its previous owner, Eleanor Blackwood, a tale of family discord and legal disputes relegating it to a state of neglect and obscurity, save for the occasional intrusion of vandals and thrill-seekers. Morgan Pierce, a young scholar of 26, delved into the enigmatic world of architectural anomalies for her thesis, drawn to the allure of spaces that defied conventional understanding. Her friends painted a portrait of a meticulous and driven soul, captivated by the mysteries that lurked within the abandoned Victorian, a place where reality seemed to warp and twist at every turn. Her roommate reported her missing 2 days ago, Lind noted, her gaze scanning the notes that chronicled Morgan's final days. Morgan spoke of visiting the house where people get lost for her research. A trail of breadcrumbs left behind in journals and notes hinted at Morgan's fascination with the peculiarities of the house, its acoustic oddities, chilling cold spots, and doors that led to ever-shifting destinations, a puzzle she sought to unravel in the name of academic pursuit. The autopsy unfurled a startling revelation: traces of a rare alkaloid, sourced from a plant used in ancient rituals, lingered in Morgan's system. Though known to induce disorientation and vivid visions, the dosage found was insufficient to claim a life. She wasn't one to dabble in recreational substances, her boyfriend fervently defended during questioning. Morgan approached her studies with unwavering dedication. She wouldn't have jeopardized her perceptions willingly. A digital excavation of her phone unveiled a clandestine correspondence with a kindred spirit, someone who shared her passion for the house and its mysteries. Veiled messages spoke of the house's memories, its silent yearning to be understood. The tendrils of their connection grew intimate and cryptic, weaving a tapestry of secrets that only they could decipher. The path of investigation led Lynn to Adam Reeves, an expert in architectural history whose knowledge of rare spatial phenomena had drawn Morgan into his orbit. Their relationship, blossoming from professional admiration to personal connection, hinted at a shared pursuit of truths veiled in shadows and whispers. Reeves, when questioned, bore the weight of sorrow in his eyes, a man haunted by the specter of loss and unanswered questions. "The house holds a legacy," he disclosed, his voice laden with unspoken truths. Its architect wove illusions and deceptions into its very walls, designed to confound and bewilder. Morgan believed there was a deeper layer to uncover, a truth obscured by mere tricks of perception. Yet Reeves stood alibied for the time of Morgan's passing, his whereabouts confirmed by the unblinking eye of security cameras that captured his distant presence at a university symposium. The threads of mystery tightened, pulling Lynn deeper into a web of enigmas that seemed to defy rational explanation. A breakthrough emerged from an unexpected source, a descendant of a leaner Blackwood residing in a distant land. Contacted by investigators, he unraveled a family secret long shrouded in silence. "My grandmother was not the sole Blackwood claimed by that house," he confessed, his voice heavy with ancestral grief. "Others met their end in that parlor, their faces etched in peaceful repose. We called it the claiming." Journals, weathered by time and hidden truths, chronicled a lineage marked by inexplicable deaths attributed to natural causes, deaths that bore the unmistakable imprint of a malevolent force lurking within the walls of the Victorian. The puzzle pieces aligned, painting a grim portrait of a legacy stained by shadows that hungered for souls lost in the dance of time. A secondary sweep of the property unearthed a clandestine chamber concealed behind the parlor's hearth, a chamber brimming with artifacts from distant cultures arranged in a cryptic pattern. At its heart, a weathered figurine stood sentinel, its features eroded by the touch of generations past. Analysis linked the artifacts to the alkaloid that coursed through Morgan's veins, a connection that bridged the chasm between the present and the echoes of the past. The tapestry of the case took an unforeseen turn when dust patterns within the house whispered of another presence lingering in the shadows, a presence that defied explanation and reason. Partial fingerprints, foreign to Morgan or any known visitor, adorned the doorknobs like spectral echoes of a past long forgotten, a specter of someone unseen yet undeniably present. Weeks into the investigation, tragedy struck anew as Adam Reeves was discovered in his dwelling, mirroring Morgan's peaceful repose, the same alkaloid staining his system with the mark of a malevolent touch. Clutched in his grasp, a key of unknown origin beckoned to mysteries yet unsolved, fitting snugly into the enigmatic compartment concealed within the Victorian's heart. In his final missive, a testament to truths veiled in shadows, Reeves penned his revelation, a truth that transcended mere mortal comprehension. "The house does not bind you in chains of flesh, but in veils of perception," his words echoed in the void of unanswered questions. Morgan saw what few could. The doors remain steadfast in their paths, but it is the mind that wanders in circles, lost in the labyrinth of the unknown. Once you glimpse the truth, escape beckons, but by then the desire wanes, and the allure of the unseen grips you tight. The case, shrouded in a cloak of uncertainty, remained an open wound in the annals of investigative lore, a tale of mysterious deaths and forgotten whispers that echoed through the condemned halls of the Victorian. Though barred by the hands of authority, rumors persisted of ethereal lights flickering in the dead of night, of visitors who vanished into the house's depths, never to return to the embrace of daylight. Some whispered of a curse that befell those who dared to unravel the mysteries that lay dormant within the Victorian's walls, a curse that claimed souls lost in the dance of shadows and light. Others spoke of a truth ancient and profound, hidden in the liminal spaces that straddled the boundaries of reality, a truth that defied comprehension and reason. The veil of secrecy draped over the Victorian remained as impenetrable as the shadows that clung to its time-worn facade, a testament to the enigma that lingered in the spaces between time and memory, a mystery that whispered of truths buried deep within the heart of a house where all doors led back to the beginning, and the end remained a secret known only to the walls that stood sentinel in the embrace of eternal night. Story 20. The ancient box lay hidden beneath layers of forgotten belongings in the attic, a time-worn relic left behind by the previous inhabitants of the house. Among the faded Polaroids inside, capturing moments of joy and celebration, one photo stood out. It depicted a scene in her own living room, the familiar couch, the familiar curtains, but the family in the picture was not hers. And there, lurking in the shadows of the hallway, a figure watched silently. A chill danced down Rebecca's spine as she gazed at the photograph, her fingertips trembling slightly, setting the edges of the Polaroid abuzz. The family in the image, a woman with honey blonde locks, a man with thick spectacles, and two children beamed at the camera, oblivious to the presence lingering behind them, frozen in a snapshot of bliss while peril loomed nearby. Descending the creaking wooden staircase, Rebecca felt the weight of the house, too vast and desolate since she had moved in 4 months prior, now pressing down on her like a heavy shroud. Placing the photo on the kitchen counter, she scrutinized it under the harsh glare of the fluorescent light. The resemblance between her home and the unfamiliar figures in the picture was uncanny. The archway leading to the hallway, the ornate crown molding, the bay window welcoming the morning light. This was indeed her house, yet these faces remained strangers to her. A seasoned detective, clad in a weathered leather jacket that whispered of countless investigations, arrived on the scene. Detective Morgan, with eyes that saw beyond the surface, analyzed the photo meticulously. Tracing a gloved finger along the Polaroid's edge, he turned it over, revealing a blank back. "What do you know about the previous owners, the Nelsons?" he inquired in a low, rumbling voice. Rebecca confessed very little. The sale was handled through a realtor, and the Nelsons had already relocated out of state. Morgan's inscrutable expression betrayed nothing as he requested to take the photograph for further examination by his team. The investigation unfolded quietly. Rebecca delved into the history of the house, learning that the Nelsons had acquired it from the Crawfords, who had abruptly departed after 7 years. The Mornos had been the owners before them for nearly a decade. Detective Morgan retraced the steps of former residents through property records, interviews with neighbors, and a timeline of past occupants. A breakthrough came unexpectedly when a former mail carrier identified the family in the photo as the Sutherlands. They resided in that house for just a year before vanishing without a trace, he affirmed. Mail piled up, schools unenrolled, cars missing, bank accounts dormant. It was as if they had evaporated into thin air. Forensic analysis pinpointed the date of the Polaroid to 15 years prior. The technician pointed out subtle details, the suspended dust particles, the unnatural stillness of the subjects. A timed photograph, she elucidated. They were posed deliberately, with someone setting up the camera before joining the shot. But who was the enigmatic figure in the hallway, if not one of the Sutherlands? Enhanced imaging unveiled more about the shadowy presence, a tall male figure cloaked in darkness, his features concealed, his posture betraying a keen observation. He seemed to belong, his presence as rightful as the house itself. A pattern emerged as Detective Morgan uncovered records of families mysteriously disappearing after a year of residency, 5 families in 5 years. Rebecca, residing in the house for only 4 months, found herself entangled in a web of unsolved disappearances. Delving into historical building archives, they discovered the architect's sudden disappearance during construction, replaced by Samuel Whitfield, a man who completed the project. A single photograph of Whitfield revealed striking similarities to the figure in the Polaroid. Despite reports of Whitfield's demise in a construction accident, his body never surfaced. The focus shifted to the basement, where ground-penetrating radar detected anomalies beneath the concrete floor. Breaking through, a putrid odor greeted them. Beneath layers of soil and concrete lay the missing families, perfectly preserved in the earth, with a camera among their possessions, an eerie echo of the attic discovery. The house became a crime scene, sealed off as evidence was gathered. A hidden crawl space in the attic unveiled a chilling secret, a makeshift living space, a camera, and a journal chronicling the lives of the families. The final entry, dated just days prior, hinted at a sinister plan to expedite the process. Rebecca sought refuge in a hotel under police protection, but the night brought no respite. A mysterious call, the sound of breathing, and the mechanical click of a Polaroid camera signaled an unknown presence. The investigation continued, the house remaining vacant, its shadows concealing untold mysteries. Samuel Whitfield's fate remained a mystery. Some believed him long gone, while others speculated on his continued existence in a new guise, in a new abode. Behind closed doors, photographs developed, capturing new families, new homes, and new watchers in the darkness. The quest for truth became a risky pursuit, for those who sought answers found themselves under an unrelenting gaze. Story 21. The tale began innocently enough for the new occupants of the Victorian-era home. Michael and Sarah Klein found themselves drawn to its old-world charm, the intricate woodwork, and the lofty ceilings that whispered stories of times long past. Little did they know that beneath the surface of peeling wallpaper lay a mystery waiting to be unraveled. It all started with a simple water stain in the master bedroom, a yellowish hue seeping through the floral wallpaper. As they peeled back the layers to investigate, they uncovered a hidden history etched in ink. A name repeated over and over, Eleanor Winters, scrawled in a frantic, uneven script that seemed to pulse with a mysterious energy. The discovery of Eleanor Winters sparked a curiosity that soon turned into an obsession for Michael and Sarah. They delved into property records, newspaper archives, and even reached out to previous homeowners in a quest to unravel the enigma that had presented itself within the walls of their new home. The search led them to a missing persons case from decades past, involving a young woman named Eleanor Winters, who bore a striking resemblance to the woman who had sold them the house, Margaret Cavendish. The pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, but with each revelation, more questions arose. Forensic teams were called in to examine the wall, revealing layers of ink that dated back 30 years. Handwriting experts compared the writings to samples from Alina's journals, but the results remained inconclusive. Sarah's discovery of hidden identification cards beneath the floorboards only deepened the mystery, linking Alina Winters to Margaret Cavendish in a web of deceit and identity theft. As the investigation unfolded, a chilling truth emerged. The handwriting on the wall belonged not to Alina Winters, but to a psychiatric patient named Rebecca Eldridge, who had assumed Alina's identity after her disappearance. Rebecca's fractured mind had created a complex web of personalities, with Alina at its center, an attempt to cling to a reality that was slipping away. The excavation of the backyard unearthed the remains of Alina Winters, bringing closure to a cold case that had haunted the community for decades. Rebecca Eldridge, masquerading as Margaret Cavendish, was apprehended trying to flee across the border, her facade crumbling in the face of undeniable evidence. The names on the wall, once a cryptic riddle, now stood as a testament to a tragic tale of obsession and deception. For Alina's family, justice was finally served, albeit belatedly. And for Michael and Sarah, their dream home became a haunting reminder of the secrets that lurked within its walls, a place where the past whispered in every creak and shadow, a house forever marked by the echoes of a long-buried truth. Story 22, renovations always lead to uncovering peculiar things. Old newspapers, broken trinkets, forgotten photographs. Yet when the couple lifted the floorboards, they stumbled upon a letter neatly folded beneath the wood. The paper was fragile, the ink worn, but the message was unmistakable. Beware the one who knocked. Before they could react, 3 sharp raps pierced through the silence of the vacant house. The discovery sent shivers down their spines. Sarah and Michael had acquired the Victorian-era home at an estate auction, captivated by its intricate moldings and storied past. Little did they anticipate that their renovation project would reveal something so unsettling. Detective Alina Reed arrived with her partner, the floorboard still ajar, revealing the shadowy space beneath. Her seasoned hands, marked by years of handling evidence, carefully retrieved the note with gloved fingers. The couple had already touched it, a contamination that couldn't be undone. Reed scrutinized their expressions as they recounted the mysterious knocking. Their fear seemed genuine. Background checks on Sarah and Michael yielded nothing suspicious. Newlyweds with solid credit and stable jobs. However, the house held a more intricate history. Previously owned by the Hargrove family for generations, it had sat empty for 2 years after the passing of the last inhabitant, Margaret Hargrove, an elderly widow who lived in solitude. Neighbors described Margaret as reclusive yet amiable. No known adversaries, no dubious circumstances surrounding her demise deemed natural causes by the coroner. Yet an unsettling air lingered. Forensic analysis dated the note back approximately 2 decades. The handwriting bore signs of distress, hints of fear or urgency. Margaret would have been in her 60s then, residing with her late husband, Franklin, who had passed away 5 years before her. Reed delved deeper into her investigation, poring over county records and interviewing acquaintances of the Hargroves. Franklin had been a respected figure in the community, a retired teacher with a knack for woodworking. Some of his handmade furniture still adorned the house. A former student recalled Franklin's descent into paranoia during his final teaching years. He felt like someone was watching him. We assumed it was early dementia. A breakthrough came when Reed spoke with Margaret's sister, now residing in a nursing home. Though her memory wavered, certain details remained vivid. Margaret was terrified towards the end, she whispered. Not Franklin, no, the man who knocked, the collector. Reed leaned in. The collector. Franklin owed money, gambling debts. The man would knock 3 times, always 3 knocks. Margaret wanted to sell the house to settle the debt, but Franklin refused. Returning to the house with a forensic team, Reed ordered further exploration. The cadaver dogs led them to a chilling discovery under the foundation. Wrapped in plastic lay a male skeleton, its skull fractured in multiple places. Dental records ruled out Franklin Hargrove. Franklin had been cremated, his ashes scattered per his wishes. This was someone else, someone who had vanished without a trace. Additional excavation unveiled a wallet encased in the plastic. The ID inside identified the man as Victor Mercer, a known loan shark and collector for an illicit gambling ring. He had disappeared 2 decades earlier. Case unfolded through forensic evidence and Margaret's concealed diaries found in the attic. Franklin's mounting gambling debts had pushed him to a breaking point. Threatened by Mercer's demands and with Margaret in danger, Franklin's tools turned into weapons, the crawl space into a tomb, the note into a cautionary tale. Margaret, out of fear and loyalty, had aided in covering up the crime. Her diaries exposed the anguish she endured afterward. The knocking persists, even when no one is there. 3 knocks. Always 3. Franklin dismisses it as my imagination. Following Franklin's demise from a heart attack, Margaret dwelt alone in the house, never remarrying, never relocating, harboring the secret beneath her feet. Her diary entries spiraled into paranoia. The knocking persists. I dread that someone is aware. The case was officially closed. Victor Mercer's remains were returned to his kin. Justice, albeit delayed and cold, had been served. Sarah and Michael sold the house, unable to bear its history. It now sits deserted, the renovations halted. Local whispers tell of nights when 3 distinct knocks reverberate through the empty halls. Whether it's the settling of aged wood or a more ominous presence remains unknown. The note lingers in evidence storage, its warning a chilling echo. Beware the one who knocked. Margaret never specified if she meant Mercer, Franklin, or perhaps another unknown figure, one who had uncovered their secret, tormenting her in her final years. Some enigmas, as Detective Reed observed in her conclusive report, remain unresolved, even when we believe we grasp the truth. Story 23. The worn wooden plank shifted under her weight, catching her attention with a subtle creak. Intrigued, she knelt down to inspect the floor, her fingertips tracing the edges of the loose board. Beneath its surface, a hidden realm awaited her discovery. With careful determination, she lifted the boards, unveiling a dark, narrow space concealed beneath the house. Dust and cobwebs greeted her at first, but as her eyes adjusted to the dimness, shapes began to materialize. A mattress, a chair, and tucked away in a corner, a weathered notebook filled with the repetition of her own name. Sarah Coleman stood frozen, peering into the shadows beneath her new home, a sense of unease creeping into her bones. Detective Morgan Reed observed silently, sensing a deeper fear reflected in Sarah's eyes, a violation of safety, an intrusion of malevolence into what should have been a fresh beginning. Please do not disturb anything further. Detective Reed's voice was steady, a beacon of calm in the eerie stillness. Clicking on her flashlight, she bathed the hidden space in light, revealing walls adorned with surveillance photographs capturing Sarah's every move, walking to her car, entering buildings, conversing with friends. A shrine of obsession meticulously constructed right beneath her unsuspecting feet. Sarah had acquired the quaint cottage from the estate of an elderly recluse named Walter Green, a man who had passed away with no known kin. The property had sat vacant for months, its secrets lying dormant until Sarah's arrival. I never met him, the previous owner, Sarah's voice barely above a whisper. The neighbors said he kept to himself. I was told that basement access had been sealed off long ago. That's what the inspection report stated. Crime scene investigators arrived, their equipment clunking against the floorboards as they entered the hidden chamber. Methodically, they documented every detail, collecting evidence that would piece together a haunting puzzle. Forensic analysis later revealed a myriad of fingerprints, all belonging to Walter Green, scattered throughout the concealed space. The timeline uncovered by investigators was chilling. Walter had been surveilling Sarah for a minimum of 3 years before his demise. He had shadowed her at community events, frequented the same establishments, and woven himself into the fabric of her life without her ever suspecting his presence. This level of fixation tends to escalate, the department psychologist explained during a debriefing, from fantasy to meticulous planning. The existence of the hidden room implies a more direct intention. Detective Reed's inquiry took a startling turn when she interviewed a former coworker of Walter's from the local shopping center maintenance department. The man shifted uneasily, his eyes darting as he revealed, "Walter used to talk about her, you know. He'd say she reminded him of someone. I just thought it was an old man's harmless fancy. I never imagined." His words trailed off, a haunted look in his eyes. "Did he ever mention any specific plans concerning her?" Reed probed. "Not plans exactly, but he had this phrase he'd repeat. 'She belongs with me.' I assumed it was just talk." A search warrant led Reed to Walter's untouched workplace locker, yielding a key that unlocked a storage unit registered in his name. The metal door screeched open, revealing a chilling sight, a meticulously replicated version of Sarah's previous apartment, down to the smallest detail. Furniture, decor, even a mannequin fashioned to resemble her. A calendar marked with a date, a week following Walter's demise, bore the ominous declaration, "Together." Further investigation unveiled Walter's troubled past, a history of institutionalization due to an obsession with a teacher, diagnosed with erotomania, a delusion of unrequited love. Decades of quiet existence shattered when Sarah unwittingly triggered his dormant fixation. As crime scene photos were spread across the table, Reed somberly reflected, in his mind they shared a special bond, destined to be united. Is it possible that she crossed paths with him unknowingly, igniting this obsession? A colleague pondered. Reed shook her head, no trace of any interaction. Sometimes these fixations require nothing more than a fleeting gesture. A smile, a lingering gaze, for him that was enough. Sarah made the difficult decision to sell the house, haunted by the thought of what could have been if fate had not intervened. During the final walkthrough, she stood in the empty living room, grappling with the unknown horrors that lurked beneath her feet. The case closed with Walter's demise, labeled as stalking with intent to abduct, a plan that mercifully never came to fruition. Sarah relocated, altering her routines and guarding her privacy with newfound vigilance. Detective Reed kept a watchful eye from afar, a silent guardian against the shadows that lingered. The cottage passed into the hands of a young couple, oblivious to its dark past. The hidden room was sealed, its secrets buried once more. Life moved on, but for those privy to the truth, the tale of the room beneath the floor served as a haunting reminder, a testament to the unseen dangers that prowl in the shadows, to the monsters who fade into oblivion before facing justice, and to the victims who narrowly escape their fates, forever changed by the specter of what lurked beneath their very foundations. Story 24. She cleared the steam from the mirror, gazing at her reflection. Everything seemed normal, her appearance unchanged. Yet a sense of unease crept over her. A flicker in the corner of her eye, a movement not her own. Turning away, her reflection remained motionless, observing. This was the beginning of Rebecca Thorne's unsettling journey. What unfolded would puzzle investigators and linger in the minds of the community for years to come. Rebecca resided in a modest apartment within a serene suburban area. Known for her meticulous nature and reserved demeanor, she led a solitary life, maintaining polite relations with her neighbors. As a data analyst in a mid-sized firm, routine and precision governed her days. No one could have foreseen that she would become the focal point of a baffling criminal inquiry. Initially, the disturbances appeared trivial. Objects in Rebecca's home were subtly rearranged, no items missing, just a subtle shift in placement. A mug on a different shelf, books rearranged, her toothbrush out of place. She brushed off these peculiar occurrences as mere lapses in memory, attributing them to her long hours spent staring at spreadsheets under harsh fluorescent lights. Detective Marion Shaw was first informed when Rebecca, after enduring weeks of these disturbances, decided to involve the authorities. At first glance, there seemed to be no overt criminal activity, perhaps a case for mental health services rather than law enforcement. Shaw documented the complaint, deeming it non-urgent among the stack of cases. There was no tangible evidence, Shaw later testified. No signs of forced entry, no missing items, just a woman feeling unsettled in her own home. The pivotal moment arrived with the incident in the bathroom mirror. During her subsequent interaction with the police, Rebecca vividly recounted her reflections' eerie independence and the constant sensation of being observed. This time she presented proof, footage from a security camera she had installed, focused on her front door. The video revealed a chilling truth that sent shivers down the spines of even the most seasoned officers. In the grainy footage, Rebecca left for work in the morning. Yet 20 minutes later, an identical figure entered her apartment using a key. Forensic experts scrutinized the video for signs of tampering but found none. The doppelganger moved like Rebecca, dressed like her, even carried her distinctive leather bag. However, Rebecca was already at her workplace across town, as confirmed by the time-stamped footage from the office security system. "It's a doppelganger scenario," Detective Shaw informed her superior. "Someone who has meticulously studied Ms. Thorne and can mimic her uncannily." The investigation escalated. Fingerprints in the apartment matched solely with Rebecca's, and no foreign DNA was detected. Neighbors reported nothing out of the ordinary, just Rebecca's usual comings and goings. One neighbor, Mrs. Keller, recalled greeting Rebecca upon her return one evening, receiving no response, which struck her as unusual but not alarming. Rebecca commenced documenting the disturbances in a journal. Minor changes in her home escalated. Food vanished from her fridge. Unremembered internet searches appeared on her computer, and unsettlingly, selfies on her phone bore her likeness but with a subtly off-kilter expression. "I feel like I'm losing my mind," she confided to Detective Shaw during their third meeting. "Or someone is trying to make me think so." The breakthrough occurred when a pattern emerged in the security footage. The doppelganger only entered when Rebecca left for specific pre-planned engagements, therapy sessions, yoga classes, Sunday grocery trips. These were routine activities with predictable durations. "Someone is intimately acquainted with your schedule," Shaw elucidated. "This isn't random, it's calculated surveillance and infiltration." A forensic psychologist posited that they were dealing with a fixation case, a person fixated on assuming Rebecca's identity, possibly aiming to supplant her entirely. Such cases, though rare, were documented in psychological studies. The perpetrator often experienced a psychological rupture, fixating on a target who embodied qualities they desired: stability, beauty, success. The focus narrowed when Rebecca mentioned a former coworker, Lily Winters, who had been dismissed due to escalating erratic behavior. Lily had closely collaborated with Rebecca, often remarking on their similarities. Post-dismissal, she sent Rebecca unsettling emails, one stating, "We could be the same person. Sometimes I feel more like you than you do." Detective Shaw obtained a warrant to search Lily's abode. What they uncovered transformed the case from disturbing to chilling. One room resembled a shrine replicating Rebecca's bedroom, adorned with countless images of Rebecca in various settings taken without her knowledge. A closet brimmed with replicas of Rebecca's attire, while a vanity displayed makeup identical to Rebecca's preferences. Detailed notes on her mannerisms, speech, and daily routine lined the room. Most disturbing were the practice videos where Lily mimicked Rebecca's walk, gestures, and expressions, progressing from clumsy attempts to near-perfect replication. "She wanted to be me," Rebecca whispered upon viewing the evidence. "Not just imitate, but erase me." Technicians unearthed sophisticated equipment for key duplication and electronic access card replication. Lily meticulously tracked Rebecca's movements, maintaining a calendar with detailed predictions of her agenda. However, Lily's ultimate motive eluded investigators. Journals found in her residence contained erratic entries, switching between referring to Rebecca as me and her within the same passage. The final entry sent a shiver down their spines. "Soon, only one of us will remain. The stronger one." As authorities moved to apprehend Lily, she had vanished. Her hurried exit was evident in her vacated apartment drawers ajar, certain technology missing. A nationwide alert was issued. Rebecca was relocated to a secure location under constant surveillance, while every site linked to her past was monitored for 3 weeks. Lily never surfaced. The case took a chilling turn when a security guard at Rebecca's former workplace reported an anomaly. Despite being on leave and under protection, Rebecca had been sighted entering the building. Video footage confirmed that an individual identical to Rebecca had used a valid ID card to access the premises, rifling through her files before departing. The real Rebecca, shielded in a secure location, couldn't have been present. The truth dawned. Lily hadn't fled. She had seized her opportunity. She now inhabited Rebecca's life, while the genuine Rebecca remained concealed. The case remains unresolved. Lily Winters evaded capture, and Rebecca Thorne chose not to resume her former existence, crafting a new identity in secrecy. Detective Shaw keeps a photograph on her desk, a striking resemblance between two women. One is Rebecca Thorne, the other Lily Winters. Sometimes she scrutinizes their features, seeking distinctions that set them apart. The most petrifying aspect Shaw imparts to new recruits is not the resemblance or imitation. It's the desire to assume another's identity so ardently that one erases themselves in the process. Our identity isn't just our outward facade, it's our most guarded possession. And sometimes its worth becomes apparent only when someone seeks to pilfer it. Story 25. Once upon a time, a mysterious package landed on Sarah Miller's doorstep. No return label, no tracking number, just a damp cardboard box whispering secrets in the morning dew. It wasn't meant for her, the name was wrong, but curiosity tugged at her sleeves. She should have turned away, left it untouched in the sunlight, yet the unknown beckoned and she succumbed. With trembling hands, she peeled back the tape, expecting mundane treasures within. Instead, nestled inside was a VHS tape, accompanied by a single cryptic note, "Watch alone." Sarah held the black plastic in her palms, its weight a heavy burden, laden with unspoken truths. Her fingertips danced along the edges, tracing the stories etched in the worn casing. The handwritten note bore the imprint of urgency, each stroke a plea for attention. Amidst the ordinary backdrop of her suburban neighborhood, Sarah hesitated. A dog's distant bark, children's laughter, the unending drone of a lawnmower, all unaware of the enigma that had arrived at her door. Braving the unknown, she carried the package inside, placing it on her kitchen counter. Doubt crept in, weaving its tendrils through her thoughts. The name Daniel Whitaker held no significance in her world. 4 years in the same house, never a mention of him. The Johnsons had been the former occupants, their absence a memory fading with time. Curiosity clashed with unease as Sarah's gaze flitted to the VCR, a relic of days gone by. The tape called to her, a mysterious invitation wrapped in darkness. Against the warnings of her inner voice, Sarah inserted the tape. Static crackled to life, a curtain of white noise parting to reveal a dimly lit room. The camera's gaze was askew, the angle skewed in haste. A man sat in shadows, a stranger named Daniel Whitaker. His voice, a whisper in the dimness, spilled truths into the silence. If you're watching this, they found you, and they'll find me too. His features, etched with exhaustion and fear, emerged from the darkness. I am not a killer, believe me. They framed me, planted evidence to seal my fate. The camera trembled, unveiling a stark room void of comfort, a temporary refuge for a man on the run. I never knew her until her face graced the news. Catherine Walsh, murdered in her own home. My hands are clean, but my name tainted by their lies. Detective Eliza Ramirez, a seeker of shadows, studied the identical tapes that materialized like ghosts on her desk. 5 recipients, 5 whispers of a man's innocence overshadowed by guilt. Daniel Whitaker, a man vanished into the night of Catherine Walsh's demise. The case seemed clear-cut, a woman strangled, evidence pointing to Whitaker's involvement. Yet the tapes painted a different narrative, a tapestry woven with threads of deception and betrayal. Ramirez's investigation unraveled the seams, exposing a web of deceit that led to PharmaCorp, a behemoth lurking in the shadows. Catherine Walsh, a whistleblower silenced in death, unraveled a conspiracy within PharmaCorp's walls. Her truth, a threat to the powerful, sealed her fate. As Ramirez delved deeper, anomalies surfaced, evidence too pristine, testimonies too rehearsed, and shadows obscuring the truth. Sarah Miller, an unwitting player in this dark symphony, received a second package, a trove of documents unveiling the sinister dance of power and corruption. PharmaCorp's secrets spilled onto her kitchen counter, a testament to Catherine's courage and Daniel's plight. The pieces fell into place, connecting dots in a maze of shadows. Daniel Whitaker, a pawn in a game of power, had stumbled upon a truth that threatened giants. Locked out of the network, branded a murderer, he sought solace in whispers trapped on VHS tapes. Through Sarah's keen eye, a reflection in a window led to a storage unit, a Pandora's box revealing the sins of the powerful. Ramirez, wielding truth like a sword, uncovered the masterminds behind the curtain, their downfall imminent. Justice, a silent guardian, arrived not with a thunderous roar, but in the quiet unveiling of secrets long buried. 3 executives fell, their empires crumbling in the wake of truth's fury. Daniel Whitaker emerged from the shadows, his innocence a beacon in the storm. Sarah, a witness to the dance of light and shadow, stood at the threshold of a new dawn. In the hush of twilight, Daniel and Sarah met once more, a tape bridging their worlds. "Why me?" she asked, eyes searching for answers in his weary gaze. "The algorithm chose you, a beacon of truth in a sea of lies," he whispered, the weight of injustice heavy on his shoulders. The wrong address, a twist of fate, had led them down a path of redemption and revelation. The VHS tapes, relics of a bygone era, bore witness to a tale of courage and deceit, of shadows dispelled by the light of truth. And in the stillness of the night, as sleep claimed the world in its embrace, the echoes of justice lingered, a lullaby for the weary souls seeking solace in the realm of dreams. Story 26, The Dance of Shadows. In the stillness of the night, shadows danced across the nursery walls, a silent ballet under the soft glow of the moon. At first, it was just a flicker, a fleeting glitch in the baby monitor's feed, barely noticeable amidst the hush of slumber. The mother, Rebecca, brushed it off as mere interference, a trick of technology in the quiet hours. But then a crackle sliced through the air, a discordant note in the symphony of the night. A voice, barely more than a whisper, slithered through the static, sending a shiver down Rebecca's spine. "SHHH, go back to sleep," it hissed, a sinister lullaby that pierced the darkness. In an instant, her blood turned to ice, a chill creeping through her veins as dread coiled in her chest. With heart hammering in her ears, she raced to her son's room, the dread mounting with each pounding step. But as she flung open the door, her breath caught in her throat, the crib stood empty, a yawning void where little Samuel should have been nestled in peaceful slumber. The room was a frozen tableau of innocence disrupted, the window sealed shut against the night, the door steadfastly locked in defiance. The only anomaly, a lone figure on the floor, a stuffed rabbit, its glassy black eyes fixed on her, a silent witness to the unfolding mystery. Rebecca's primal scream tore through the night, a raw symphony of grief and terror that echoed through the silent house. The neighbors, stirred from their own dreams, dialed for help, their voices trembling as they recounted the mother's anguish. When the authorities arrived, they found Rebecca on the nursery floor, clutching the stuffed rabbit to her chest, her eyes haunted by the unknown. The 4-month-old infant, Samuel, had vanished into the night, leaving behind a void that no logic could fill. The investigation that followed was a labyrinth of shadows and whispers, a puzzle with missing pieces that refused to align. No signs of forced entry marred the pristine facade of the home, the security system standing sentinel through the night, unmoved by the unseen intruder. Rebecca, in her grief-stricken confusion, became the focal point of suspicion. Her husband, Daniel, absent on business at the time of the disappearance, cast a shadow of doubt with his strained marriage and turbulent past. Medical records whispered of postpartum struggles, a mother's silent battle with the darkness within. But then a flicker of light in the enveloping gloom, a thread of hope amidst the tangled web of uncertainty. Microscopic fibers, alien to the household tapestry, clung to the nursery windowsill like a spider's silk, hinting at an intruder's clandestine entry from the shadows. As the investigation twisted and turned, revealing secrets long buried in the darkness, a new figure emerged, a specter from the past, a dark mirror of tangled destinies. Elaine, a woman with vacant eyes and a haunted past, cradled Samuel in her arms, a fragile link to a life that could have been. The truth unfurled like a rose in bloom, petals of betrayal and deceit cascading in a tragic dance of shadows. Daniel, the puppeteer of fate, pulled the strings of a macabre play, his hands stained with the blood of innocence. The baby monitor, a silent sentinel of truth, bore witness to the darkness that lurked within the heart of man. Its hacked whispers carried the weight of a mother's nightmare, a father's deception, and a stranger's longing for what was lost. In the hush of the courtroom, the echoes of the past reverberated in the silence, a symphony of broken dreams and shattered lives. The jury's verdict, a final chord in the tragic opera, sealed the fates of those entwined in a dance of shadows and secrets. As the stars blinked in the velvet sky, Rebecca cradled Samuel in her arms, a beacon of light in a world shrouded in darkness. The stuffed rabbit, with its glassy black eyes, remained a silent sentinel of the night, a reminder of the truth that lurked in the shadows of the nursery. And so they retreated into the embrace of a new dawn, leaving behind the ghosts of the past to dance their eternal waltz in the fading light. The baby monitor, now silent and still, held within its digital heart the echoes of a night that would never be forgotten, a night when shadows danced and innocence was lost to the whispering wind. Story 27, the aged envelope exuded a sense of history, its corners tinged with a faded yellow hue, a sharp contrast to the pristine stamp, freshly inked and bearing the weight of recent days. With cautious precision, the detective unfurled its contents, revealing a solitary sheet of paper, its message hastily typed in an erratic, almost desperate font. "I am sorry for what I did." The paper felt damp to the touch, carrying with it a faint metallic scent that lingered in the air. It was only upon closer inspection that the telltale reddish streak along the bottom edge drew their attention. Not ink, but blood. Detective Sarah Morgan, her gloved hands moving with practiced expertise, carefully placed the letter into an evidence bag, aware of the significance of the crimson stain. The forensics team's analysis confirmed her suspicions. The blood matched the DNA profile from an unsolved homicide, a chilling case that had eluded resolution for years. The victim, a young journalist named Rebecca Warren, had been discovered in her apartment, a tragic tableau of multiple stab wounds. Her missing laptop and scattered notes hinted at a connection to an unfinished story, a thread left dangling in the labyrinth of unanswered questions. Despite exhaustive interviews and tireless scrutiny, the case had grown cold, a specter haunting the precinct's corridors. And now this enigmatic letter, delivered mysteriously to the Homicide Division, breathed new life into the stagnant investigation. The paper and envelope bore scant traces of fingerprints, mere smudges hinting at a deliberate attempt to erase any lingering identity. But the postmark, a beacon in the darkness, offered a glimmer of hope, a slender thread to tug at in the pursuit of justice. As Detective Morgan gathered her team in the dimly lit briefing room, the walls adorned with the stark imagery of crime scenes and the tangled web of suspect profiles, she affixed the letter's image at the heart of their collective focus. "This changes everything," she intoned, her voice a whisper in the stillness. "Our perpetrator shows signs of remorse." Detective James Chen, her stalwart partner in this arduous quest, cast a discerning gaze upon the missive. "Or perhaps it's a facade, a ruse to deceive us," he countered, his skepticism a counterpoint to her cautious optimism. The forensics team's meticulous examination traced the unique typewriter impressions to an antiquated model long vanished from modern production, a rarity but not beyond the realm of possibility. They embarked on a quest, reaching out to antique aficionados and collectors across the region in search of this elusive artifact. As the tendrils of the investigation unfurled, they delved into Rebecca's life, a tapestry of ambition and integrity. Her editor spoke of her relentless pursuit of truth, her unwavering commitment to unveiling corruption's hidden visage. A recent assignment had led her down a treacherous path, investigating a prominent family enmeshed in local politics, their shadows concealing a web of deceit and betrayal. Interviews with Rebecca's boyfriend, Michael Barnes, unveiled subtle shifts in his demeanor, a flicker of unease betraying hidden truths. Rebecca feared she was being followed, he confessed, his voice laden with regret. "I dismissed her concerns as paranoia, a fatal mistake." As the detectives probed this newfound revelation, a second letter materialized, echoing the first in its cryptic origin. The message, longer this time, bore the weight of guilt and complicity. She unearthed secrets about the family, their inheritance, the patriarch's demise. It spiraled out of control beyond my intentions. The trail led to the mansion of the deceased patriarch, where they encountered his eldest son, Richard, a man cloaked in shadows of suspicion. His collection of antiquities included a trove of vintage typewriters, a telltale sign of a sinister design. Under scrutiny, his alibis crumbled like ancient parchment, revealing the artifice beneath. The breakthrough arrived with the revelation of microscopic fibers on the envelopes, linking them to custom stationery exclusive to the youngest daughter, Eleanor. A revelation unfolded, exposing Richard's clandestine machinations, his thirst for power shrouded in deception. A search of his abode unearthed a hidden chamber, a chamber of horrors containing damning evidence, newspaper clippings, surveillance materials, and a vintage typewriter, the instrument of malevolence. The blood, a macabre signature, confirmed its origin as Rebecca's own. But the tangled web of deceit extended further, intertwining Richard and Michael in a deadly dance of betrayal. Financial transactions laid bare a sinister pact, a pact sealed in blood and treachery. Confronted with the evidence, Michael's facade cracked, his confession a lament of shattered trust. I revealed Rebecca's findings to Richard, unaware of the darkness within him. He whispered, his eyes brimming with remorse. The final chord struck with Aliner's revelation, a damning recording capturing the nexus of conspiracy. Richard's voice, a chilling echo of malice, sealed his fate. She must be silenced permanently. In the hushed confines of the courtroom, justice unfurled its wings, casting a pall over Richard's protestations of innocence. The trial, a theater of shadows and light, culminated in a swift verdict, a verdict that echoed the finality of a judge's gavel. As Richard faced the consequences of his deeds, Detective Morgan approached Rebecca's grieving parents, offering solace in the wake of their irreparable loss. The blood-stained letters, poignant relics of a dark chapter, found sanctuary in evidence storage, a testament to the indelible mark of guilt. The case of Rebecca Warren, a cautionary tale etched in the annals of investigative lore, whispered of the power of conscience, the haunting specter that shadows even the most meticulously orchestrated crimes. In the stillness of the night, as the world slumbered, the echoes of justice lingered, a lullaby of closure and redemption.